Good evening and welcome, everyone. I will call our September 23rd regular meeting of the Board of Directors to order. Thank you to those attending our meeting in person tonight, joining us over Zoom, and those who will stay informed by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment tonight, they will need to fill out a speaker form located at the back of the boardroom on the table to my left and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Colvin, seated at the end of our board table on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda tonight. I also want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Icestone, Eastham, and Williams. I'm President Malone. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Finch, Lingo, and Board Secretary Colvin. And with that, our first item, sorry, my agenda is off center. With that, our first item of tonight is the Education Showcase brought to us by Mann Elementary. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the school board and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. At Mann Elementary, we believe that leadership is not something students grow into someday, it's something they begin practicing right now. One visible and impactful way our students demonstrate leadership is through our Safety Patrol. Tonight, we are proud to highlight Safety Patrol and our incredible fifth grade students who take on these responsibilities each day. Safety Patrol at Mann looks a little different given how busy our surrounding streets are and the uniqueness of our arrival and dismissal procedures. Under the guidance of Amy Nugent, a fifth grade teacher at Mann, students in Safety Patrol are given the opportunity to lead with our core PBIS values. Amy has played a key role in helping our students grow into these leadership roles, and I am grateful for her commitment to both structure and empowerment. At this time, I'd like to invite Amy to introduce our student leaders and share more about the work they do. Please join me in welcoming Miss Amy Nugent.
Good evening, school board members and guests. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share one of the many ways our students at Mann Elementary are learning and leading. Tonight, you'll hear from a few of our fifth grade students who represent an exceptional group known as our Safety Patrol. Safety Patrol at Mann is more than just a daily routine. It's a leadership opportunity. It allows our students to serve as positive role models while practicing the core values we stand by: responsibility, integrity, determination, and empathy, what we proudly call our RIDE expectations. From raising and lowering the flags with care, to welcoming students at the door each morning, to helping our youngest learners get safely to their end-of-day destinations, Safety Patrol members take their job seriously and with heart. At this time, I'd like to invite a few of our Safety Patrol members to walk you through their roles and what leadership looks like in action at our school. They are Elizabeth Rorda, Lily McConnell, Teo Harrell, and Frank Bitterman.
All right, so they're each gonna read off a slide and they've got some cards with them too. I'm just gonna be here to navigate the presentation. So I'm gonna move the mic off to the side so they can use it.
Safety Patrol, an opportunity to be positive role models while demonstrating responsibility, integrity, determination, and empathy. general information about safety patrol. It is a privilege, not a right. Some months we might have 2 jobs, other months we might have 3. Each student is expected to do the job that is assigned to them. Students may request a particular assignment for the upcoming month's calendar, but there is no guarantee that they will always get the task they want each time. If a safety patrol student doesn't follow right expectations, both in and outside of the classroom, their student patrol duties may be suspended until the student demonstrates consistent positive behavior. We represent men and are expected to behave accordingly.
Next up is Lily.
Playground door expectations. We show responsibility by holding the doors for students to enter. This happens in the morning from 7:45 to 7:55 a.m. or holding the doors as students leave. This happens in the afternoon from 2:45 to 3 p.m. at the latest. It's also important that we do not allow students to come back into the building after leaving at the end of the day. In the morning, we return to class before 8 a.m. and be ready to learn. We show integrity by being on time for duty and walking quietly through the halls on the way to our assigned duty, staying on task during duty. Show determination by holding doors until 7:55 a.m. duty and 3 p.m. duty. Show empathy by saying have a good day or have a good night while holding the doors. Waving but high-fiving can cause backups in the line, so we skip those.
Come on up, Frank.
Flag duty AM. Checking in one of our teachers for assistance with lunch count. Quietly bringing the flags into the office and waiting for Miss Sarah to take us outside at 8 a.m. or after specials on Tuesdays. Undoing the ropes and folding the U.S. flag first. Hooking the U.S. flag first with the stars, the blue section on top left. Hooking the state of Iowa flag. Hoisting the flags up one at a time and securing the ropes with a figure 8 in the way Miss Sarah showed us. If the flags are to be at half staff, hoisting them all the way up and then bringing them down to halfway. Returning to class immediately after. Showing integrity by going to position promptly, doing our best to keep the flags from touching the ground, only flying the flag when the weather allows. Showing determination by doing our best and not giving up even if it's hard. Showing empathy by remembering the flag represents our country and the sacrifices that have been made for our freedom.
Next up is Taya.
Flag duty PM. We show responsibility by going to the office and meeting Miss Wadner at 2:45 p.m. quietly, 1:45 p.m. on Thursdays, following flag etiquette as taught by our media secretary, Miss Sarah, returning to class to get our belongings and dismissing for the day. We show integrity by walking through the halls quietly on our way to duty, arriving on time and handling the flag with respect, keeping the flags off the ground, lowering the U.S. flag first, then the Iowa flag, and lastly, folding flags as directed and asking for help when we are unsure. We show determination by being willing to try even if it is hard at first, and we show empathy by remembering the flag represents our country and the sacrifices that have been made for our freedom.
Teacher helper for pre-K, kindergarten, and first grades. Show responsibility by leaving class at 2:45 when dismissed and going to our assigned spot quietly, asking the teacher how we can help that day, and and following their directions, walking the students outside with the teacher, and returning to class to pick up our belongings and following our after-school routine.
We show integrity by being kind and respectful to all, even when the teacher is not watching, treating the littles the way we want to be treated.
Show determination by using kind words, counting to 10 when frustrated, and not giving up if a student doesn't respond positively at first.
We show empathy by remembering that we were little once and how we may have looked up to the older students. And we want to be the kind, big sibling we all wish that we had.
Okay, that is our presentation. However, I did ask our students to come up with one anecdote for you so that you could kind of hear just something from their experience as to what it's been in terms of how it's been meaningful to them. And so I'll invite Elizabeth up to share her thoughts on one moment that's been meaningful to her.
One thing I really love about Safety Patrol is that it lets the older kids show leadership for the little kids and inspires them. For example, I have lots of fun helping and teaching first grade to be silent and show ride while in the halls.
My favorite so far of Safety Patrol is raising the flag, and I guess I'm just proud of raising the flag of our country because of how much it means to us.
I've done 2 jobs so far, but my favorite is probably being a preschool helper, because you get to hang out with the little kids and all that stuff.
I have also had 2 jobs so far, but my favorite job has been doing door duty because I like doing door duty because I get to see all of the students' smiling faces because they get to go home.
All right, this concludes our presentation, so unless there's any questions from the board.
Hi guys, I just want to make a comment. This has been my favorite ed committee or showcase that we've had so far this year because I was a man Mustang and I was on the safety patrol also. And raising the flag was my favorite part of safety patrol. And I am just so thrilled that we're continuing this tradition because it teaches a lot of really great skills, including how to properly fold the flag and respect the flag, which is a actual life skill that comes in handy as an adult. So thank you guys for coming and sharing with your stories with us. Like, it's just been great to have you here.
Do any other directors have comments?
I just want to add that I would rank this as one of the highest presentations we've had at board meetings since I've been on the board. So I really thank you again for coming. I know it's a little late, but I really appreciate your being here. And I listened very carefully to what you said, and I'd like maybe to come over to Man sometime and see if you could help me through your routine.
It's tough.
Let's give Man a round of applause. Thank you so much, students, for being here with us tonight and for your presentation. Next up, we have community comment. Just a reminder, those wanting to make community comment, please turn in your form that's located in the back of the room on the left to Board Secretary Coben, seated right here on the end. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak about. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and will be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speakers who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on the screens right above the board table. The initial comment period shall be limited to an hour. Remaining comment, to the extent necessary, will take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And tonight's first speaker will be Danella Van Tassel. Please, thank you.
Testing. My name is Danella Van Tassel. I was a public school teacher for 30 years. I'm here to read a statement from my daughter, Aspen Lohman, who is unable to attend the board meeting tonight. Here is Aspen's statement. My name is Aspen Lohman. This fall would have been my 29th year of teaching first grade at Coralville Central, a school and community that I love and I have dedicated my entire career to. I am no longer teaching because of 2 assaults and 1 attempted assault during last school year. I'm writing this because my colleagues and I deserve to teach in a safe environment where we are supported and not just repeatedly told. The administration knows it's happening everywhere. I don't know what else to tell you. It takes a long time to right a ship. This is no longer acceptable. To be clear, the in-school violence that was written about by my husband wasn't the first for me or others. My colleagues and I have been subjected to physical alterations, assaults, threats, punches, kicks, scratches, and bites countless times. I'm including a copy of a prior assault for your information. The most recent assaults and attempted assault during the last school year were different. I began to fear for my life. I was stalked. The attacks were much more violent and personal. The district's safety plan was to have me lock my door and have the principal and colleagues help me avoid this student during the school day. At times, I was even escorted through the hallways to keep me safe. This safety plan didn't work and subjected me to what my doctor and mental health counselor later diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and panic attacks. I am no longer the person I was. I struggle to get out of bed each day. I am losing my hair. I have nightmares almost every night. I try to avoid people. I plan the time to walk my dog when I can best avoid the neighbors, whom I adore. If I shop, I have to go to Cedar Rapids, and then I still cry and have panic attacks. I don't go to Iowa football games anymore with my family. The district didn't support me after these instances, other than grant me leave, which should have rightly been a workman's comp issue. Had the district showed compassion and empathy, then my recovery may have been better. They not only didn't support me, but attempted to sweep this issue under the rug. The HR manager didn't want me to tell parents what actually happened and even edited my email to parents to hide the truth. I wasn't able to say I was leaving for safety reasons. I had to say for my well-being. Why wasn't the district honest with parents about what happened? I never got to say goodbye to my sweet kids. After the last attempted assault, I went into the principal's office shaking and in tears, saying I was leaving. I couldn't do it anymore. I was asked dryly by the principal, Did you write sub-plans? His lack of compassion broke me. The district could have said, "We are sorry about what has happened to you. It's not your fault, and here's what we are going to do about it." And it should have come from the superintendent, not the HR manager. A safety plan was promised to me to get me back into the classroom this fall. That safety plan was never created. I was made to feel like the assaults were my fault, and my colleagues feel the same.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next, we have Gretchen Lohman.
Good evening. My name is Gretchen Lowen. I think you said to put where your address is from, but I'm Springfield, Illinois. I'm going to continue Aspen's letter. We feel like nobody cares. Shouldn't the school board care? I understand that the district is revealing statistics about teacher violence tonight, including in 2024-25, we had 11 instances when a staff member needed outside medical attention due to an incident of intentional student conduct. It is not clear if my attacks would have been included in those 11. I highly doubt the veracity of their figures because there is unwillingness by many colleagues to speak up or fully report these, because nothing ever happens and there is fear that they will be assigned to another school or disciplined. One of the ODRs that I completed was even changed to a less severe category. This chilling environment should be investigated independently by the school board. All I ever wanted to do was be a teacher, and that has been taken away from me. Teachers deserve to be able to teach in a safe environment, and students deserve to not see their teachers get assaulted. I'm hopeful that you can actually do something to keep these acts of violence from happening to my colleagues going forward and hold administrators accountable. Thank you for listening. I have some things to say too. I don't get to see Aspen a lot normally during holidays. Unfortunately, she always has crazy stories about student violence against her. I never thought I'd have to talk about this in public, so I'm paraphrasing. At a holiday, it was casually shared that Aspen was stabbed by a student with a pencil. When I asked why she would return to that school, she said, "Those kids need me." When she was placed in a headlock and couldn't breathe, I asked why didn't she push the student away. She said, "As a teacher, you aren't supposed to touch a student." When she was strangled by a student in front of her entire class, I asked, "Why did you come back to that classroom?" She said, "Because I needed my students to know that I was okay the next day, because it was also very traumatizing for them." And what were some of her final words to the school? She said, "Violence is getting out of hand, and you have a lot of teachers who need you to do something." The common theme here is Aspen never thought about herself. She was concerned for her students and her fellow teachers. I implore and encourage you to do what is needed to make drastic changes at this school. This non-action has changed my sister-in-law for life and cut her long, successful teaching career short. I ask you, in your personal place of employment, have you been choked, stabbed, strangled, or stalked? Would it be tolerated? As a board, you need to investigate these problems. You need to look into the behavior of the leadership. You need to protect and support your teachers. If you didn't know about these concerns about student violence, now you do. Even after all these acts of violence that Aspen endured, she still wanted to teach at Coralville Central because she said, "Those are my people." So when she reached out to somebody about a return, someone just said, "The student's doing great now." The response was crushing to Aspen, her plans to retire from there and her recovery from the trauma and her long-term mental and physical health. Please do the right thing and do something. You owe it to your teacher, and you definitely owe it to Aspen, a 28-year staff member who taught exclusively in your school district and also at Coralville Central. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mike O'Leary.
Good evening. Michael Leary, residence is now Riverside, Iowa. Just a little tiny background on myself. I was actually a student in the Iowa City School District, Hoover, Southeast, City High. I student taught at Robert Lucas. I taught in the classroom 12 years in Northeast Iowa, Decorah, Cresco, Waterloo, LaPorte City. I was an elementary principal in Dunkerton, Iowa with Dan Smith, a gentleman I dearly love. but also I was principal at Burlington, and then I got the opportunity in 1987 to be the principal at Corvallis Central. I was there just 21 years, and during that time, I had an opportunity to hire Aspen. It was an amazing hire. She plays such a key role on the primary unit with the other very strong kindergarten, first and second grade teachers. If you think of a bridge that is supported in the center and now some of the blocks are missing, that's Aspen. There's a void there now that I don't know how it will be filled. I ask you to think about the fact that she has continually served the district for 28 years and wanted to do more, but she is a changed person. She's not the same because of the events that have happened to her. I'm curious how many people in the audience here are here just in support of Aspen. They don't necessarily have to speak, but if you just, thank you. In addition to that, you would see numerous emails from family members and students. In closing, I just hope that this whole situation has enough time to work through all the questions that have been asked. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Braden.
Hi, my name is Braden Tolentino, and I've been a student in the ICCSD my entire life. I am now at West High as a senior, and one of the teachers who truly stuck out to me during my 12 years of education was Aspen. But I always knew her as Miss Lohman, the sweetest and most supportive teacher I've ever had. In the summer of 2018, we became pen pals. When I went to see her 3 years ago, during parent-teacher conferences, she remembered who I was and didn't hesitate to give me a hug, despite it being years since I've last saw her. But today, I was thinking if I had to be the one hesitating to approach her. After reading John's article, I was absolutely heartbroken to hear about what she struggles with now. In a school whose motto is to stay respectful, responsible, and safe, I'm standing here wondering what has been a discussion around being respectful, responsible, and safe to Aspen's situation. It appears to me that the district has failed to meet these standards. The lack of respect towards Aspen to only give the minimum, even after she's given all she has for this school. The lack of responsibility to not hear her cries for help about the repeated assaults, and of course the lack of safety she felt even in the class with her first graders. As a community, we cannot allow children to traumatize other children. Something has to change. We need to once again teach all children that actions have consequences. Inclusion in a safe learning environment is a right, and it's a privilege to be in our district. Let kids know that they cannot assault someone, especially teachers, without any consequence. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next up, we have Paige Van Cleve.
Hi, my oldest son, Cooper, started at Corvallis Central in August of 2016 in Aspen's class. We met prior to school starting, and upon an introduction, I immediately felt at ease. We discussed some of my concerns. She was compassionate, reassuring, and made the anxiety I was feeling disappear. During that year, my son struggled with a few things, and Aspen was more than gracious. Even helping realize, even though we had had eye exams before, he needed glasses. By the end of the year, he was a different child. She sends out a daily email to all of the parents with questions and how to get your kids to know what they're doing during the day instead of just nothing. She takes up dress up days very seriously, and the kids love it. She takes first and last day's pictures to send to their adults. She's empathetic, patient, and incredibly skilled at engaging the kids in her classroom. Her positive energy is infectious, and she sets the bars for teachers and goes above and beyond that. Our son Quinn was supposed to start in her classroom this fall. We have been so excited to once again be in the magical classroom of Mrs. Lohman. My eldest has even spent time this summer teaching him the Go Cubs Go song as they won the World Series the last time my oldest was in there, and we are diehard Cardinals fans in our house. Upon finding out the reasons for Aspen's absence, we were obviously upset. Allowing violent behavior pushes more teachers out of the classroom is unacceptable, and we need to do better. Our staff in this school is trained to keep intruders out and our kids safe. What about the safety of the kids already in the building? Every day, violence is happening in the schools all across our district. I have talked to many, many educators, and they all say the same thing. Well, we don't even report it. Our district says we are the best choice, the best academic rankings, AP courses, electives, college prep, career prep, all of those things for kids. And yet here we are, not keeping our teachers safe. When are we going to set the bar for safety, especially for our staff members? We could do that. We could be the school that sets that bar that everyone else looks up to, and not just our academics, our athletics, or things like that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Marianne Coleman and Royce-Ann Porter.
Hello. Royce-Ann Porter, 136 Upper News Court, Iowa City. And I just want to speak on Marion. She didn't show up, so I come here. I am the president of the Black Voices in our community, and I heard about the story, I read it, and I just want to say a couple of things. First, I want to acknowledge the teacher, Aspen, who was attacked. What happened was frightening, traumatic, and completely unacceptable. Our teachers give so much of themselves to our children, and no one should ever have to fear being harmed when they step into their classroom. I stand firmly with our teachers in saying that violence cannot and will not be tolerated. I've also heard the frustration in this community. People upset that the district didn't bring in a task force or stronger measures years ago. That frustration is real, and I don't dismiss it. But tonight, we have to focus on what we will do now, because simply rehashing the past won't keep our teachers safe or help our children heal. I want to share a story from my own experience. Years ago, when I worked as a juvenile court liaison, I was assigned to a case involving a 9-year-old boy who had attacked his teacher. At 9 years old, he thought it was funny to watch the teacher scream and run away from him. To him, it was a game. The behavior was unacceptable, and the courts struggled because there was nowhere for a 9-year-old like him to go. He was on his way to a mental institution before his childhood had even really begun. When I met his mother, she told me what he had lived through. That little boy had walked with his father to the store one day, and while they were there, he watched his father be murdered right in front of him. At 9 years old, he carried that trauma with him everywhere he went. He never had the chance to get the help needed. That experience has stayed with me because it showed me something important. When children lash out in violent ways, there is almost always deep pain underneath. That does not excuse the behavior. It was unacceptable then, and it is unacceptable now. Teachers must be protected, but if we only punish and push children out without addressing what's driving their behavior, we are setting ourselves up to see the same cycle repeat again and again. Our kids deserve more. They deserve access to mental health care, counseling, trauma-informed support, and real intervention, not just labels that call them criminals. We must protect our teachers and stand with them, but we must also commit to helping our children before they are lost to us. We can do both. We can ensure our classrooms are safe places for teachers and students alike, and we can give hurting children the chance to heal. That is the responsibility we carry as a community. Our teachers deserve protection, our children deserve help, and together we must make sure they get both. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Lori Dorshug.
Hi, I'm Lori Dorshug. I'm a Grantwood Southeast City High grad and currently a part-time employee at North Central Middle School. I was not planning really to talk tonight, but I am here to support Aspen. I have known Aspen and her husband John and their kids for 20 years now, and I can say that none of the descriptions you've heard tonight have been exaggerated about what an awesome person Aspen is, and what a great, from all I've heard from teachers that I know, she's also an outstanding teacher in the classroom. I would describe Aspen as, bubbly is the word, right? I mean, the most bubbly, happiest, outgoing, huggy person in the world I have ever met in my 56 years of life. And when I ran into her a few months ago, I almost didn't recognize her. I'm like, what is going on? And she gave me a huge hug and explained the situation. And I'm really flabbergasted that the administration didn't do more for an employee, especially of Aspen's caliber and all that she has given to this community and to the schools and to the kids. Obviously, there are laws to protect the students, and I understand that administration has to follow and abide by those rules and provide education and safety for the students. But where is the line when we're not protecting, when we're putting the students' protection over the protection of the teachers? Somewhere there has to be, there has to be a line. And I don't know how we decide where that is, who decides where that is. But in particular, in Aspen's case, this isn't a case of just a student with violent outbursts. This is a case of a student with very targeted, specific outbursts. And to me, that's a little bit of a different situation and calls for maybe a different response. So I just would ask everybody to, I hope that you can come together and form a task force or whatever needs to happen. I don't know, but I am in full support of Aspen and all the other teachers that need more support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Tim Rogers.
Good evening. My name is Tim Rogers, 601 Lakeview Court, Tiffin, Iowa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I was a teacher at Coralville Central from 2018 to 2022. I had the opportunity to work with Aspen. I was a special ed teacher there, level 3 teacher there for 4 years. Aspen, some of the things I wrote down real quick: kind, caring, compassionate, integrity, grit. Aspen worked, the population of students that I worked with, Aspen seemed to always get the toughest ones. And she showed up every day and tried to give her best. I know this situation that she dealt with last spring is well known, but I also know that's not the first. A quote that I saw a couple weeks ago, it says, "If we aren't willing to face it, we can't fix it." My challenge to you, superintendent, and to the school board is, this isn't just a one-time incident. As a teacher, I'm always told to tell my kids, if you have a question, raise your hand, because probably if one of you has a question, there's probably others that have questions. This isn't just a one-time incident. It's not a one-time incident at Coralville Central. It's probably a multi-incident. And my challenge to the board and to the superintendent is, what can we do to help our teachers? These schools are like a home. Your teachers are the parents or the guardians. If the parents and guardians don't feel safe in that home, how is a child be able to come there and feel safe? So my challenge to you is, what can we do to our teachers to help them be better prepared? When I was teaching at Coralville Central, a saying I was always told was, the kids are resilient. Well, my question is, are the teachers resilient? There's a lot of situations they have to deal with daily. And I'm sure Aspen's not the only one. So it was great to work with Aspen and to see what has happened to her. I know when I was done at 4 years there, I was wanting to get out of teaching because of my experience of there and how I was treated by some of the students and what the administration did not do to back me up. So, not trying to be mean, but I'm still teaching and still teaching. I've been teaching for 25 years in special ed, so I'm a lifer and I love working with that population. I love teaching. And I just want to, how can we help our teachers? Let's look forward. Let's rock that boat forward. We know there's a bad past, but what can we do to get better? That's all I got to say. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mary Coughlin Julian.
Good evening, Board. My name is Mary Coughlin Julian. I have 2 children, one still in, one at City High, and one who just graduated, who then went to become a paraeducator at Southeast Junior High. I am also, to be candid, I'm an employee of the university, the school district, used to work at the university, my bad. I know that your situation is impossible, the seat you're sitting in, completely impossible. I know that every day I go to work and I wonder a lot of things. I understand trauma. I understand trauma-informed care. I understand safety. I've worked in education over 30 years. This is not just your responsibility. To those of you sitting behind me, you have a responsibility as well, and so I'm glad that you were here. However, this is a community issue. The people sitting up in front of us here are not capable of solving this problem. They're just a small piece of this puzzle. I know that they're doing what they can. I also know that sometimes their hands are tied. And I also know sometimes, because they're human, we could do different or more. As an employee of the district, I believe that every one of our employees shows up every day to do the best that they can by our students. We call ourselves the district of student first. City High is the school that leads. I love those things. I love the Iowa City Community School District. Our teachers, we've talked a lot about teachers, but I want to bring up paraeducators. The folks who just recently got a nice raise, which was great. I really appreciate that. They appreciate it. it's, it's still hard to show up every day when you're not sure if you're gonna get hit, kicked, bit, spit at. And I can tell you all of those things happened to me today. For whatever reasons, our children are struggling, our staff are struggling, and I know that you are struggling with these things as well. If there is a way for us to see forward, if there is a way for you to help us move forward, I think we have to do different. We talk about dismantling our systems. We talk about dismantling systems of oppression. We used to anyway, when DEI was a thing. We don't have that now. So these systems didn't change, and neither did our people, but the students have. And we must move forward in some way that's different than what we've been doing. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. We are not getting different results because we are doing the same things over and over again. I understand we use the latest research. We are research informed. We have the University of Iowa right here that helps us out with that and beyond. And I know you guys do a heck of a job and have a heck of a job to do, and it's very much appreciated. But I think if we keep doing the same things that we've been doing, we're gonna get the same things we've gotten. I would implore you to destroy the system that you have in some ways. Take it completely apart and assemble something that works better. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Elisa Meggett.
Hi, my name is Elisa Meggett, and I have to grab my prop here. Okay. I've taught in this district for 22 years, and tonight I bring to you this laundry basket full of empty prescription bottles. Each one represents the toll that ICCSD administration and ICEA union leaders have inflicted on me. Not through teachings, but through 7 years of relentless retaliatory harassment that left me with PTSD, multiple surgeries, and a crippling autoimmune condition. And this is the human cost of teacher harm. For more than 2 decades, I was a passionate teacher. I was always the last to leave the building. I received 14 local, state, and national teaching awards, and 97% of my students reported that they see the world differently as a direct result of my class. But instead of being valued, I was targeted. I was placed on administrative leave the very day after receiving the 2023 Innovation in Education Inspire Award. I was forced into intensive assistance after 3 bogus evaluations when I requested independent review more than a dozen times, which HR Director Nick Proud refused. In total, I documented 30 violations of the ICEA negotiated agreement, 100 violations of ICCSD code, standards, policies, and guiding philosophies, 45 violations of BOEE and IDOE laws, and multiple violations of federal, civil rights, labor, and disability protections. This wasn't just paperwork, it was retaliation. 6 bogus reprimands, hostile schedules, ADA violations, forced apologies, weaponized parents, surveillance, sabotage, workplace mobbing. It broke my health. Over 300 medical appointments, 4 surgeries, and more than $1 million in financial harm. And while this is happening to me, it was happening to our schools. When Superintendent Degner took office, ICCSD was in the top half of Iowa districts. Today, we've plummeted to 241st out of 313, the bottom 23rd percentile. In 2016, we ranked among the top 30 middle schools at North Central Junior High, where I was teaching. I opened that building. We were outperforming 91% of our peers. Today, we've dropped to 162nd, a dramatic drop down to the bottom 52nd percentile. This decline came even as administrations increased student-teacher ratios, or we increased the number of administrators by 3 or 4, and our student-teacher ratios dropped. There wasn't a significant increase or decline in FRIP. There was no major structural changes in the building that would result in adverse student outcomes, except for administration. The problem isn't resources, the problem is leadership. And the board shielding administrative misconduct instead of stopping it, in violation of your duty under policy 200.3 in Iowa Code, or ICCSD board policy. It's your job to hold administration accountable to district policy. You've been warned again and again and again. I don't know that you read any of the documents shared with you, but this is the outcome, is we are declining, we are hemorrhaging as a district. This basket represents more than empty bottles. It represents a broken health, broken trust, and broken leadership.
Thank you. Next up, we have Angela Strobel.
Hello, my name's Angela Strobel. I am the parent of a first grader that was in Miss Lohman's class last year. And I just wanted to speak, I'm sorry. I think my son Henry witnessed his teacher getting strangled in front of him. And as a teacher myself, I understand violence happens in the classroom. I mean, it's happened to me. Kids have trauma. I understand all of that, but I had no idea that that had happened until the end of the school year when I got an email from Miss Lohman saying that she had PTSD. And then I said, Henry, did Miss Lohman get hurt at work? And he said, oh yeah, she got strangled by some kid in 5th grade. I won't say his name because I know that's not right to do, but and whoever said that she came back to work to make the kids understand that it was okay, she did, because he thought it was okay. And it is not okay for me not to know that that happened to my son and to be able to talk to him about it. So whatever policy stopped me from knowing, just to even discuss with him what had happened that day and what he had seen, I think that needs to change. Please, please change that. Please let parents know if their child witnesses something like that at school. That's it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Marion Coleman.
Good evening. I know that there are a lot of people in this room who know me and remember me because I worked in the district for 30 years. And I was in charge of federal compliance and equity. I had my kids in this school district. I know the traumas that come about. I probably will not be appreciated very much because I know what it means to feel pain without getting beat up. But I also know the other side of the coin. I am extremely sorry and sad that the teacher struggled with that particular situation. And in my experience, I have found that what we experience helps us to learn, teaches us how we can look at situations and do better. We do better when we know better. You helped us know better tonight. You helped us to know that we are always going to be looking at what we can change to make things easier for both sides of the coin, the teachers and the children. My students went through Iowa City School District. We struggled. I changed schools not because of anything other than the fact that my oldest one went to Catholic school and he was a lot nicer than the youngest one. So I changed to school where I thought people would help him. My concern now is that you know that in 30 years, I had several jobs. I worked in several schools. I looked at all kinds of unfairness. I looked at the fact that justice was not served in every single case. But what I did see and what I took away from my job was, how do we support the folks who are hurting and sit down with executive cabinet and make some changes and look at policies and see what it is we could do differently. Many of us did not experience Dr. Bartlett in public school law, and many of us did. A lot of the things that we were taught were taken to heart, but everybody in our school district has not had that experience. And everybody doesn't actually feel empathy for all kinds of things. I do. I grew up in the South. I know for a fact that harm can come without others even recognizing it. But I know for a fact that as a person who worked in this district for 30 years, as a person who is of color, as a person who is the only administrator of color to ever retire from the school district, we have work to do. We have work to do with discipline policies. We have work to do with procedures. We all have to be on that team. We all have to take what has happened as a lesson in, okay, folks, heads up. You have some work to do. And I would like to see us.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Who said thank you? Oh,
Thank
Rufina,
you.
you told me thank you. But anyway,
Thank you.
I will say one more thing.
Your
I know
time
you
is
said
up.
thank you.
Your
but
time is up.
I know my time is up, but I always was a pusher, even in the district. I just want everybody in this room to know that these people that work in the school district will make an effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have agenda approval. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I'll be a yes. I'm not logged in yet.
Thank you, Director Lingo.
It hasn't popped up for me, so I am a yay as well. I don't
Has
know.
anybody gotten it?
Oh, there it is. Popped up for me. I had to refresh. Try refreshing.
I'm a yay vote, Kim.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Director Abraham. Thank you, Director Finch.
Who are you waiting
I'll just do roll call. Director Eastham,
I voted yay.
Director Istone,
Yep.
Director Malone,
Yay.
Director Williams.
Yay, but I did vote.
Didn't come
No.
through.
Okay.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is, before we get to consent agenda, did any directors have any questions regarding the bills that were reviewed this cycle? Hearing none, are there any items that directors would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion for tonight's consent agenda?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Director Abraham. Is anybody getting it to pop up?
Mine popped up.
Mine popped
I'm a yay. Try refreshing, Kim.
Maybe I need to.
You could do roll call if that's easier.
Hold on, you just knocked me all the way out. Okay, Director Lingo, you're the only one that has not come through.
Yay.
All votes have been cast, so the motion carries, so all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is our public hearing for tonight. Vice President Abraham.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2025 CFI Dream Accelerator project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on September 9th, 2025. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on September 10th, 2025. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. on September 18th, 2025 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms in the on the Iowa City Community District School District website on September 5th, 2025. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Thank you, Vice President Abraham. We will close tonight's public hearing. Next up, we have committee reports, and we will start with the Operations Committee, which is chaired by Director Lingo.
Last month's meeting, we went over extracurricular activity data, the students that participate in them, the demographics behind it, specifically gender and race, free and reduced price lunch, that's not there yet. I just had a fairly robust discussion on it. I would encourage you, if it is of interest, to tune in to YouTube and go back and listen to the meeting. Unless there's any questions from the rest of everybody else.
All right. Thank you, Director Lingo. Next up is a Education Committee report from the chair of that committee, Director Eastham.
Thank you, President Malone. The Education Committee, which is a committee of the whole board for the public information, met last Tuesday at Penn Elementary to have a presentation given to us about the district's preschool expansion and current programming level. And most of that information is included, I believe, in tonight's annual teaching and learning report. So we might refer to it when we get to that part of our agenda. And just to let everyone know, I thought the presentation was encouraging, inspiring, and very commendable on the part of the staff of getting us to the point we are now with offering preschool to some 650 plus students. I get the may not have the number exactly right, Superintendent Degner. So, and we have plans to increase that number too. We have preschool offered in every elementary school building now in the district. So we're headed in the right direction in terms of offering preschool, and preschool makes such a huge difference in a child's readiness for learning when they enter kindergarten.
Thank you, Director Eastham. Were there any other comments from directors regarding Education Committee? Hearing none, that will take us to tonight's policy review, and we're looking at the 200 series policies and 200.3R1, and I will turn it over to Director Williams, who chairs that committee.
Thank you. We had our regular review of the 200 series, not a lot of updates that needed to be done to those policies. We are going to clean up the policy about the when we review each policy. We had a good discussion about that. And then I thought, had a really productive discussion about 203R1. I don't anticipate that we are ready to vote on that next month. We're going to bring it back to P&G one more time. There were a few tweaks that directors asked the admin team to make, so we will give the team a chance to change some language there. We'll discuss it next month at P&G, and then maybe the next month it will be ready to vote on.
So next month, vote on in October, or next month, November?
For 203R1, I would not anticipate a vote until November. For the 200 series, for the regular reviews, we should be ready to vote on those next month, like normal.
Thank you for that clarification. Any comments from other directors attending? All right. Hearing none, that takes us to tonight's first presentation, which is the 2024 Annual Teaching and Learning Report. And Superintendent Degner, as our executive directors make it up, you can open us up.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Tonight we're starting off with our annual Teach and Learning Report. We're also going to share some initial information with you on the Iowa School Performance Profile results that got released a little earlier this school year, so it kind of threw off our cadence of some of the way we were going to stage information to you over the fall. We were originally anticipating a release of those in December, but it happened right away here in September this school year. So this report has also been moved up in the timing of the year. Usually you get this later, but as we're getting some of that Iowa assessment data turned around to us faster, it made more sense to try to deliver this early in the year since it's really a look back to last school year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lucas, Eliza, and Laura.
Thank you. Good evening. I don't know why these two are standing so far behind me, but they will be joining me in presenting our annual Teaching and Learning Report. As Superintendent Degner shared, it is a review of the last school year. So sometimes I just was looking, I was like, why does it say 24-25? It's 25-26 school year. So please remember, it is a reflection over the last year. However, we are also going to dive into our different departments while we reflect on last year, talk about some of the goals and the areas of focus for this school year. So at the center of everything that we do in the Teaching and Learning department is around our 14,550 students that we served last school year. And within our team, we have the privilege of working with educators with curriculum instruction and assessment, and talks a little bit about what they were really focused on this past school year. Our education services and student success, we saw some fantastic growth, which is really shown in a decline of chronic absenteeism that we'll highlight in our report this evening. Our health services, documenting that we are working with our students on a daily basis to help cover their basic needs, making sure that they are healthy and prepared to be at school. Our Office of Student and Family Supports, we are talk a little bit about how we communicate with families and how school and family partnerships can continue. Special education, how we doubled the teacher support compared to other UENs with unique specialist roles, and our Office of Professional Development. 73% of our teachers met with an instructional coach for individualized professional development over the course of the year. So this evening, we are going to walk specifically into each of those departments and the work that they did last year, but remembering that everything that we are doing is grounded in the framework of high reliability schools. So if you look at where we've been and what we refer to as HRS over the past couple of years, this year we've been really focusing on level 2, which is effective teaching in every classroom. And so we've spent a considerable amount of time this year with our teachers digging into our new art and science of teaching, which is our instructional framework, which we call NASAT, working to improve instructional practices and just having that common language of how we talk about instruction. We know that we have the right people in our classroom with our teachers and our personnel at the buildings, and just working on honing our craft so that we're all moving in that same direction. And so as you go, we present throughout this evening on the different departments, knowing that we always anchor back to the high reliability schools and continue our work through levels 1, 2, and 3. As we mentioned on the first slide, the departments that are in our teaching and learning are curriculum instruction and assessment, that is headed up by Ms. Carmen Guanagali. Educational services and student success. We have a few members from our education and student success team, if you just want to kind of wave over there, headed by Executive Director. Mr. Kelly is not thrilled that we made him move over here so that he could present, so he reluctantly waived. Health Services, Jessica Jimerson is unable to be here with us this evening, but she helps lead our Health Services Department. Preschool, Christy Yetley is in the back. She is our preschool coordinator. Our Office of Professional Development by Anna Austin Lankema. She heads our Office of Professional Development. Special Education, Director Ashley Reedy. Just gonna wave so we know who she is. And then Student and Family Supports is a department that was headed by Ms. Corrine Frank, who she has now joined our Human Resources team. But since this is a review of last year, we wanted to include the amazing work that she and her team did over the last school year. We love acronyms here in the world of education, and so we wanted to just include a slide. I think we have gone through the slides to make sure that we spell those things out, but this is just kind of our teaching and learning glossary, as these are some of the things that we will talk about throughout the course of our report. And if you had the opportunity, which I know many of you did, to dig into our 63-page report, you saw these acronyms come up quite frequently, so just wanted to have this as a resource for you. So the first department that we want to jump in and highlight is Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, again, led by our director, Carmen Guanagale. Our highlights, last year, we worked really hard in creating and piloting proficiency scales in grades K through 5. Our proficiency scales provide clear learning expectations across grade levels. And so with a fantastic team of teachers that came together and worked with our curriculum department, it was creating proficiency scales that help us determine where we want students to go, identifying what it would take for a student to be proficient on each of our priority standards to ensure that students are learning. So that was a highlight for us to have all of those created in all subject areas for kindergarten through 5th grade. Illustrative Math is our math program that we adopted in grades actually K through 8. But in 6 through 8, it was one of the first times that we were really ensuring that curricular consistency across middle schools as well as the elementary. We're excited about that. The beginning of our data is showing that we are making improvements in math. Very first year of implementation is what research tells us does not happen. We have seen a slight increase, which research usually tells us when you implement a new curriculum, you're going to see a decrease. And so we were excited to have consistency K through 8 with math, with using the same math curricular materials. And then our work-based learning, we increased our work-based learning opportunities in multiple courses. I know Carmen, Lucas, and Dominic Audia with our career technical ed worked really hard to create those work-based learning experiences so that students were really getting some opportunities to apply the skills that they have with what they envision themselves in the future. Our 3 focus areas in curriculum, instruction, and assessment this year is reviewing our science and world language curricular materials to improve alignment and instructional practices. Dual enrollment, we are launching a dual enrollment initiative allowing students to graduate with both a diploma from us in ICCSD and an associate's degree from Kirkwood Community College, as well as starting some academies. And so we have been working with Kirkwood Community College to offer a health academy here at the Center for Innovation downstairs, giving students that are interested in health careers more access to dual enrollment courses. And so those are some of the highlights from this past year and our focus areas in curriculum instruction this year.
Hello, directors. So I want to talk about the education, the Office of Educational Services and Student Success. The highlights this year have to deal with student safety and reporting. We definitely saw a 56% increase in student reporting, so they're using the systems that we have in place, like Say Something or our on-call alert. They're reporting bullying and harassment in a couple of different forms, like our bullying and harassment and other forms of victimization. There were 44 reports of that. There have been over 1,012 CSTAG or Comprehensive School Threat Assessment investigations conducted, which led to a decrease of about 18% in bullying and harassment incidences. So the students are utilizing the systems that we have in place, which is really exciting. And then also in attendance, super exciting is like Eliza had mentioned prior, we are actually the lowest of UEN network schools in our chronic absenteeism. So it's even lower than what's reported right here. But you can see that there was a reduction from the 21-22 school year to the 24-25 school year. A significant reduction there. Student suspension, we had a 10.22% decrease in suspensions, marking a 3-year all-time low. So increased connectivity to school and suspension reductions, we believe, are due to the restorative practices that we put in place. For example, the restorative reentry process that is now mandatory for all of our schools to implement, especially when students are displaced from class. We did a cross-departmental collaboration on the CBA due to our Part B designation that had to do with the amount of students with special needs who were of color that were highlighted as needing support or being suspended. And so we were able to get some funds towards that. Definitely a staff increase in social-emotional behavioral health and social-emotional learning in classrooms, and then other alternatives to suspension, like our controlled substance evaluations and Navigate 360, which is like those are lessons at the secondary level that students are assigned when they do something wrong or when they need to learn about a misstep that took place. Some of our focus areas, though, are around professional development. We want to continue to develop all of our staff and eventually stakeholders in the areas of bullying and harassment prevention, our CSTAG, which is our comprehensive threat assessment guidelines, and restorative practices. We've done a lot of work, but we know we need to do more. And then just improve processes. We want to make sure that we work to improve chronic absenteeism and our restorative reentry after students are suspended. We want to make sure that we are holding buildings accountable. And for health services, so I wanted to highlight a couple of things with our health department. She's not here right now, but they've logged 15,766 visits from students. Certified all of our nurse staff in Stop the Bleed. And so we've held CPR classes for over 199, and in every school, and over 199 staff are certified. There are 4 more schools earned the Heart Safe school designation, so there's a total of 7 of those, which is really awesome. Medicaid processed claims generated over $3.4 million in reimbursements, and then we served 597 students with 1,243 visits, which is really cool, which means that we had return customers with our Healthy Kids Clinic. Some focus areas for this upcoming school year have to deal with expanding our CPR training. We want to make sure that we have Heart Safe schools designated across our district, and then also in data tracking. So we want to make sure that we continue to refine and improve how we're tracking student visits, the conditions, the outcomes, to help us guide our decisions there. And I'll pass it over to Eliza.
Thank you. Director Eastham had mentioned that we did have the opportunity last Tuesday to have Ed Committee around preschool. And as you know, some things we were most proud of last year was the preschool option at every elementary school. Prior to last year, preschools were at buildings if they had space. And so sometimes we were adding, moving, and adjusting preschools up until like the week before school. And so last year was the very first year that we were able to have a dedicated preschool classroom in each one of our 20 elementary schools, and then piloted 6 classrooms for full day preschool for our 4-year-olds. And then we saw an increase last year in enrollment in our district from 535 preschools to about 602. Question was asked last week that I think is important to highlight is we serve approximately 1,000 students in kindergarten. That's kind of what we've seen the last few years. And so last year, seeing about 602, we were seeing about 60% of our students that would have eventually become kindergartners in preschool. With those highlights from last year transitioning into this year, our focus areas have been to successfully launch full-day preschools in every one of our schools. We now have 25 full-day programs in 10 a.m. p.m. sections. And so there is an opportunity for 4-year-olds to attend full-day preschool at each one of our elementary schools, which we are super excited and proud of. We added, I think Nick gave me a look of like, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to find 10 dually certified preschool teachers, and we did. So we added 10.5 full-time preschool teachers that are dually certified in both early childhood education as well as early childhood special education. We currently have 620 students that are just in our preschools, and we serve over 650, including our preschool partners that we provide support to that are in the community. The curriculum department helped us fund gross motor kits, which are really fun kits that are traveling across the district to each of our preschools that encourage fun and engaging large motor skills. As we know, our earliest learners need to really work on how to control their bodies and how to learn those skills. Our Iowa City School District, I believe she's back there, Laura Ebinger with her team, they were able to fund outdoor play equipment. We know that with more kids staying longer, the wear and tear on our equipment goes quicker, and we got to keep them entertained. And so we were able to add quite a few pieces of outdoor play equipment thanks to the foundation. One thing that we are super excited about and are working to continue to grow this year is to make sure that our students that are coming to us at 4 years old have somewhere to go after school hours. And so this year we have 12 of our partners through our before and after school program that are providing after school care for 4-year-olds as we continue to think about how we can expand that. So that's something that is everywhere. And that's what we are prepping for the 26-27 school year, is looking at ways to ensure that our kids that are coming to us at 4 years old have the same opportunity for that wrapped around care that our K through 5 students have.
All right, thank you very much. So you may have seen the format of the report change a little bit if you remember what it looked like over the course of the last few years. Just a huge shout out, that's a lot of data. If you comb through it all, just everything you would want to know about Iowa City schools you have in there. A huge thanks to the following people who helped make this data happen. Austin and Jeremy, who are amazing on our data team. They're probably just as excited, if not more excited, that this is now done. Those two did a tremendous job. You saw the data was pulled a little bit different, maybe looked a little bit different. That was to streamline the process. We have access to this data all over our system, but a lot of the times what we were doing was duplicate entries. So it wasn't working the smartest. We're working really hard, just not the smartest. So big thanks to them for their efficiency in this report. Then also huge thanks to Summer, Stacia, Kara, and Allison, who also helped pull some data as well as reviewing the data for its accuracy too. So again, huge thank you to all of them who helped make the report happen for this year. I get the pleasure of introducing our professional development, our formerly the teacher leadership program with Anna. So looking at the highlights for them, standards in terms of what professional development will look like in our district. So every single building administrator as well as district administrator in our district attended summer PD over developing and designing and delivering high quality PD, which seems like it should be a norm for people that lead a building and lead a district. But one thing that we wanted to make sure that we do is establish consistency, that when we are developing and designing and delivering PD in our district, it all comes from a consistent basis that everybody has the same learning. So huge thanks to the learning that took place this previous summer, and that's continuing to go on with our buildings. Our PD calendar, we launched a centralized PD calendar to help efficiency with the buildings in the district to make sure that when we pull teachers out and for any type of professional development, that we're keeping in mind that coverage is happening in the building with our substitute teachers. Individualized PD, Liza highlighted this on one of the first slides, that 73% of our teachers are meeting with an instructional coach during the year. So the average of the meetings with those teachers is 6 per year, and that can be developed based upon that teacher-coach relationship, based on an area that they want to work on in their classroom or with their teams. And then lastly, PK-12 alignment, making sure that everything that we're doing across our system, that when we're delivering PD or when we're delivering the teaching and learning or admin coach PD, that we're all aligned across our system. So when we take a look at the focus areas for our Office of Professional Development, looking again, a centralized PD hub where everybody can go and have access to the materials rather than, well, I think it was in this presentation or in this drive, making sure that anything somebody wants to pull up regarding the PD across our district, it's all in one centralized spot for all of our district employees to access. PD offerings, we're continuing to make sure that the PD offerings we provide our employees and our teachers and our administrators are high quality. One of the things we're designing and preparing for right now is that November 4th or 6th? November 4th, all right, I was right the first time. At that November 4th PD days, it's gonna be all teacher-led and teacher choice. So we're looking forward to developing and designing that with our teachers at the center of that day. And then our new educator cohorts. So if you've been a new teacher in our district or anywhere in the country, you feel like you're on an island. So we've got mentors that help support them, but one of the things that they really benefit from is just to hear and be around people that are experiencing the same thing. So beginning next month, both our elementary new teacher cohort as well as our secondary new teacher cohort will launch their first meeting. So we're excited about that new offering for our teachers this year. I think it's going to be extremely beneficial to not only get them the experience, but also hope for retention, higher retention within our district. And next program that I'm highlighting, our department, is special education. So if you remember last year at about this time, one of the things I talked about was a focus area last year. Just because a student is in special education does not mean that should take away the types of opportunities and electives that students should be enrolled in. That was one of our focus areas for last year, and extremely excited that the work our special education department, our teachers and our administrators, along with the scheduling pieces, have done to ensure that our students are enrolled in those CTE courses that are those high interest, high valuable courses for them to take. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we highlight here, that we expanded from Liberty, piloted it last year, and it's now at all 3 high schools, was making sure that I get this right here. Practical assessment exploration system for those students to explore with those areas after high school and even in high school, that those areas that they want to learn more about. So again, piloted in Liberty last year. We're excited that that's occurring in all 3 of our high schools this year. The administrator capacity, we've done a lot of work with our administrators on how can they help in the process so that when they're, excuse me, in the IEP meetings, how can they help with that delivery model. You're going to hear more about that here later this evening, but one of the things we want to make sure the administrator are in those IEP meetings, so making sure that they're knowledgeable of the process and how they can best support the teacher, the student, and the family as part of that process. And then lastly, that resource allocation, making sure that using the student an independence map to make sure that there's to guide the equitable paraeducator allocation and develop fading plans that promote independence. Again, while we love the support that our paraeducators provide, our ultimate goal is that our students don't need any further additional support through paraeducators. So again, working to promote that independence with our students. And then looking at our 25-26 focus areas with special education, continuing to expand the practical assessment exploration systems across our schools and to make sure that they're clear, data-driven systems and that we fading those plans away. And that data-informed IEPs, again, talked about that. The process that we're working on with our administrators and making sure that the supports and the services that we provide our students are always anchored back to data.
Talk a little bit about student and family supports, and that is that department that Corrine formerly headed up, which we still have some work being done by other team members there. But some of the highlights are the SEBH, our social emotional behavior health development of a collaborative team that focus on implementation across tiers, and that's in our buildings. Federal programs in regards to formalizing procedures around identifying students who need that McKinney or who qualify for McKinney-Vento, fostering connections, and our migrant education programs. Something that has been super helpful for all of our buildings is the language access services. We've increased access and use of multiple translation and interpretation tools, things like talking points. You all have probably heard about that one or whatever. Well, we have people on that team that track the usage of our language services and have seen a significant growth in the access of our language services. Some focus areas for this upcoming school year are the critical incident stress management team. And so that is the team that goes out and supports our buildings when crisis takes place. So, you know, in the past we've had students who've been in crisis, and it impacts the entire really school community, so all of the stakeholders, but that team actually drops everything and goes to support those students and staff members. And so we really want to advance the work of that group. And then also our BASP program, our before and after school programs, expand access at all 20 elementary sites, including preschoolers. Thank you.
All right, me again. Appreciate the fact that we are delivering this out of order. This is usually like 2 months from now, as we kind of discussed here in the introduction. So our administrators received access to their profiles last Thursday. For me, it's like Christmas. I love like looking through it and starting to put stuff together. So I know our administrators love looking into this as well. They love data, they love comparison. Where do they compare it to others in the district as well as others across the state? So what you're going to see over the course of the next few slides is just a preview, if you can hold your anticipation, for our full delivery of the performance profiles next month. But again, we just wanted to have a big overview as far as where we fell within a system, our district, as well as our schools within the performance profile. So if you remember back, that's not it. All right, there we go. If you remember last year, we talked about the profile changing. They changed the scoring system and as far as what was counted and how much of it was counted towards the overall score of a building. I'm excited to say that they maintained the same scoring system, so we knew exactly what to expect this year. You know, not to give too much away for next month, but one of the things we talked about with post-secondary readiness was concurrent enrollment, work-based learning, and industry-recognized credentials. That was supposed to start this year. It didn't. So post-secondary remained, work-based learning, and concurrent enrollment. We haven't received any additional updates on the IRC, the industry-recognized credential. I think that's in place for next year. So I got to read the information about why that was not, but again, that wasn't an Iowa City district thing, that was a state. So again, we'll be delivering the full information, but again, you kind of see as far as how the profiles are determined based upon the scoring, based upon those areas. What I wanted to do here over the course of the next few slides is kind of indicate where our buildings are, and then kind of how we came to our district data. So what you see across the bottom there are all the different factors that add up to a district's profile. So you see that 0 where the cursor is at right now. So anything above the line is an improvement. Anything below the line is an area of growth. I do want to highlight a couple of different areas on this because I think it speaks to the amazing work that's being done. So you see that chronic absenteeism, that looks really bad, right? Because that's below the line. That means it's a decrease in chronic absenteeism. That is a good thing, all right? So you see there, remember, chronic absenteeism, students that miss 10% or more days. So we saw just under 10% decrease in the number of students that were considered chronically absent compared to last school year. One of the things that I also want to highlight there at the far end is the post-secondary readiness. So you see two different things factored in there. They have work-based learning factored in, as well as the concurrent enrollment, and that's students that score 3+ or higher on the AP exam, or students that are enrolled in courses at Kirkwood Community College or the University of Iowa. So really big thanks to kind of everybody that helped. We knew, if you remember our scores last year, they were not good. In the UEN, I think we're second lowest last year when we looked at our post-secondary scores. That 43.68% is in our work-based learning. So there's a lot of factors that have to do with that, whether it be additional offerings that we're offering to students during the school year, outside of school, getting them connected with internships. In some cases, is just tagging or coding it a little bit different in Infinite Campus. Those were the easy fixes. The harder fixes was having our teachers, our coordinators look into what are some expanded opportunities that we can offer our students. So the 43.68 is a huge increase, obviously, from last year. When I took a quick look at the other UEN school districts, I think that's third highest increase from work-based learning from last year to this. So again, doesn't mean that we don't have continued work to do, we do, but again, those are areas that we want to continue to highlight out of those different factors that determine the district's profile. One of the things I want to do here next on the next couple of slides is where did our buildings fall into the rating categories? So obviously, as you see there, the categories stay the same, exceptional all the way down to priority. So what you see here is a breakdown of elementary, middle, and high schools and where they fell within the continuum. high schools, we also have our alternative high schools. So they have separate categories in terms of when you can kind of see them on like the heat map is when they have all the buildings. But when we have the high schools there, we are also factoring in our alternative high school within our district and where our K-12 online program fell as well. So those are this year's rating categories that our administrators found last year when the profiles were delivered. I'm continuing doing the wrong one. All right, so then I think it's also important to see where did we fall last year compared to this year. And then what I wanted to provide into that last category is the percentage of Iowa schools that typically fall into each of those designated areas. So again, just kind of a quick overview. We had an increase in number of buildings that were commendable and acceptable, a decrease in needs improvement, and an additional building in the priority area. So again, these just, they tell part of the story, they don't tell the entire story. But again, proud of the kind of the overall trends that you started to see here compared from last year to this year with where our buildings fell within the profile. But again, you'll hear much more, probably more so than you want, next month when we deliver the entire presentation for the performance profile. That is the entire 24-25 APR. We are going to we're going to go back over to our seats to answer some questions. We know we're not running away, but it might be best for us to go over there where our resources are with the questions so we can make sure to answer them appropriately for you all. But yeah, thank you. Right?
Sounds good. So as you're walking back over there, thank you tonight for the presentation. And I would open it up to directors if they have questions or comments for the team.
Was there supposed to be a 63-page report attached to High Bond? All that's up there is the presentation. Yeah, I'm not trying.
Yes is the easy answer, Director Lingo.
Okay,
There should be
if we could-
a larger
I-
report that's attached there, yes.
I mean, I got
with all of
questions
that,
from the
so-
presentation. But
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I see, yeah, just that we just have the slide deck attached there, so we'll get that added. We'll get that added.
I don't have a question. I thank you for the presentation. Like, there's so much great information in here and really great things that the district is doing. I just want to comment on the change with chronic absenteeism, because I really think that's remarkable. And I know that it's been a focus of the admin team. I know we're putting attendance, like support people in our buildings, and that everyone has been working really hard on this. And it's so nice to see that it is paying off. It's tricky, it's really hard, because chronic absenteeism isn't something that the district or the school or the building can control 100%, right? We have to work with our families. And so I like to see that change, I think really speaks to the hard work that's going on in our buildings, the collaboration that we're doing with our families. I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of you all for doing it. I think that is a shining star with this report. Congratulations. Keep up the good work.
I would like to concur with Lisa's comments. It's really a great accomplishment. And I would just like to say to Director Lucas that you cannot supply too much data for me.
Okay, I just have, well, I've got quite a few questions. Actually, I just wanted to kind of get into the weeds a little bit, just maybe get a little more information, I think, for the community, particularly with some of our community comment tonight. So the critical incident stress management team, I was wondering if you could tell me more about the makeup of that team, and what are some examples where you would put that into action?
Hi. Oh, is it on? No?
Yeah. Oh, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe Brady will fix the mic while I'm sitting here. So the critical incident stress management team prior to this year was in partnership with Grantwood AEA. So that was one of the services that they helped provide to our district, some guidance and some leadership there. With their support and some training, we started to create and kind of uplift our own team within the district. In particular, given the number of responses that we saw, we needed to provide some really in-depth support to, especially at some of our high schools in the last 5 to 7 years. So this current year, we are kind of transitioning to a new model. We'll have a number of staff on the team that'll be receiving a stipend for some of that support. It previously was an unpaid position, essentially voluntary. And then that team really goes into the buildings to help kind of stabilize that learning environment when something's happening on the ground. We had a couple instances last year in particular when we lost a staff member. We'll go on site, provide some support for the administrator, walk alongside them when they are meeting with their staff initially to kind of talk through what's happening, offer what supports will happen within the context of the school day, how we're going to tell students, how we're going to tell families about an incident, where students and staff can receive additional support throughout the day should they need something like that, and then just some further debrief kind of stepping away slowly, right, depending on how the building is doing and what kinds of needs are surfacing. So most frequently, we use the team to respond to either a student or staff death of some sort or some emergency that's kind of unforeseen or we're not expecting within the course of the school day. But what we are exploring now, in addition, is what are some of these other things that are happening that maybe put a strain on a classroom or put a strain on a component of the building that maybe just needs some additional support. So continuing to grow how we could use that team to really make sure our staff are receiving services and support as they're continuing to try to navigate and keep that environment safe for kids.
Thank you, Corrine. And then I was wondering if you could tell me how many are on the team and what is their professional background, and do they come from the ESC or are they coming from the buildings?
So right now we have myself and then Jess Jimerson, who are co-leading the team, 5 additional team members based out of the ESC who will be kind of the primary team or the lead team, backgrounds in school counseling, in social work, primarily those 2. Focuses, and then our backup really is our student family advocates, our school counselors, sometimes our student nurses or our school nurses as well, but we really we'll lean on that initial group and then pull from the school counselors and student and family advocates as needed.
Got it. This sounds like a great addition. A couple other questions here. So the Say Something app that we have, I know that students use it. I was just curious, do teachers use that app? They do? Okay, all right. And the district incident forms that are filled out, do we have a procedure whereby these are reviewed by someone in the ESC to kind of look at trends about what's going on in our buildings?
You hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes. We have it set up right now where when our schools fill out a district incident form, we can see it. They usually will they'll usually call Kate or Sharita or myself or either Lucas or Eliza, depending on what the situation is. We can jump into their folder and see exactly what's going on. And sometimes they even share it with other administrators across buildings because it might be a cross-building event. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we are able to see that. They loop us in right away. They just know to do it.
So are we kind of looking at that and identifying trends and maybe responding to those trends? Is that something we've been doing, or is that something that we're planning to start?
That's something we've been doing,
Okay.
as like that comprehensive school threat assessment process. That team is always looking over those things, and they're usually involved when it gets to a serious situation. And so more than not, most buildings err on the side of caution, and they let us know whether they need our assistance or not. Like, hey, this is what's going on. But we can always jump in and see.
Okay, all right. So you mentioned the suspension data, which has been going down, and that's wonderful. We love to see that. I do want to make sure that we're using that data as a signal to the board to kind of guide us in what we think that is needed in the district, rather than a scorecard, right? I think sometimes when we have a goal, we can have some unintended consequences of trying to reach a goal, right? So I'm curious if, is behavior really truly improving, or is it just that we're suspending less kids?
I believe behavior actually is improving, just based on the amount even of restorative, we have an option where people can do a restorative reentry circle option, and administrators are leaning on that a little bit more. So, and with that, again, we're not taking students away from consequences. It's just that they're being held accountable in a different way. So even the uptick in say something, like things like that, people are reporting more things, but we're handling it in a different manner. So yeah, we've already had conversations with our staff a couple years ago when we realized we needed them to really collect data and with continuity, that we're not about hiding data. Like we want to really see what it is so we can get to the root cause and support.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Laura. And then just one last question about the IEP meetings. Just wondering how much teacher input is incorporated into those meetings, and then if the para educators are involved in those meetings.
Thank you for the question. Can you hear me? So you asked a couple questions there, so I'm going to go from the last one back. In regards to your question about paraeducator involvement. So we look at first the required IEP team members. IDA stipulates who has to be at the table, and we have to ensure that we prioritize scheduling around those required members. We do our best to include additional team members as requested by the school team or by the parents. Parents are able to, or guardians are able to bring anyone they want to the IEP team table. The reality is that at times there will be scheduling conflicts with certain members, right? And so we also look for additional ways we can include their input. That might look like meeting with them ahead of time, gathering questions from the team ahead of time, and having them provide written input. So there's a variety of ways we ensure that we engage all team members in the IEP process. So that was your second question. I said I would answer that one first, and now I don't remember your first question.
How much teacher input is incorporated? Yep.
Thank you. So again, similarly, the case managers and general education teachers are critical team members. And so the IEP team process is a discussion process where all team members have a vested interest in the outcome and in getting a product, meaning the IEP, that best meets the needs of the students. So every voice matters and weighs equal importance.
Thank you.
Director Finch, I appreciate your questions, and when we get back to the Continuum of Services presentation, I think there's some good overlap there, because I think there's even some pieces in what you asked and I think in what the team provided that, you know, is an issue for us to continue to look at and work on. Like when we talk about overall behavior, there's some intensity of behavior, right, that I think is a very real, piece we want to continue to look at about how we support. Like Ashley talked about the input for general ed teachers, that would be something we'd want to come back and talk to and make sure, is that embedded throughout the system, right? And so while I think there's some general answers we provide to those things, I think there's also some continuous improvement efforts we'd want to look at in those. And I think we'll cover that in some of that continuum of services. So just keep those questions in mind when we come back to that one too, in case there's need for greater clarification.
Thank you. Yeah, actually I had them written down for that presentation, but I saw the opportunity, so I took it. All right, thank you.
We just might provide more in-depth answer at that time.
Great, thank you.
I know there's been a lot of talk of the Marzano's high reliability school framework, and there's been a lot of money and time and energy invested in it. I'm just kind of wondering how have we improved our math, reading, and science proficiency and growth since implementing that, or have we, or when should we expect some results out of it?
So when we take a look at, I'm getting through a couple different questions on there. Sorry.
That's fine.
If not, can't hear me here. But when we talk about level one, data in itself and I can go through kind of what the enrollment trends have looked like over our district. When we take a look at some of our subgroups, including FRL, IEP, and ELL students, we've seen some kind of large growth in the last few years. So that means we've got students with some extended barriers than we would typically see within our district. But when we take a look at how HRS directly impacts our student achievement, when we take a look at level 1, that's ensuring that all of our teachers have a team to meet with. So one of the expectations of a team when they have their collaborative team meeting every week is that they review the 4 PLC questions. What do students know? What don't they know? What's our response when students don't know? And what's our response when students do? So one of the things that our teams are working to do is to assess and provide some common assessments within their teams, as well as taking a look at what they can do either as individual teachers or as part of a collaborative team to look at that student data. Level 2 is all about improving teacher instruction. So when we take a look, the greatest impact that's an indicator of student success is the teacher in the front of the classroom. So what we've started doing the last couple of years with our focus on HRS Level 2 is really building that toolkit for our teachers in the classroom, working through the NASOT that Eliza communicated earlier, the new art and science of teaching, about the building centering around an instructional vision. What are they going to focus on within the classrooms, and how are those strategies leading to student achievement? One of the things that we're focusing on with our administrators and our instructional coaches, which we just had our first meeting earlier this month, our first meeting of the 25-26 school year, is focusing more on student achievement. So we spent a lot of time on the functioning of NASOT and how that impacts an entire system. But now what we're looking at this year are what are the different data sets that our teams need to be reflecting upon, or that our buildings need to bring back together. So that was one of the things that we did in our last meeting that will continue to come back, is what is that student achievement, and how do we know what we're doing within HRS is making an impact with student achievement. Then when we take a look at level 3, we discuss some of the things that are happening across our curriculum areas. Making sure that what's being taught in one building is being taught in another, and another, and another, with a guaranteed and viable. So again, that's we've seen some great success, as Eliza indicated, with math, looking at K-8 throughout our entire system. One of the things that I do want to highlight, talking through student achievement in itself, and this is going to be hard to communicate because I'm just sitting over here in a mic and I don't have a visual to kind of show it. But again, we saw an increase from 22-23 to 25-26, an increase of 4% in our FRL student population. We saw an increase of almost 1% in our IEP student population, and our ELL students almost 5%. So we saw some significant increase in those student subgroups. But then when we highlight how can we take a look at that into what are we seeing as part of our achievement data, when we take a look at that, our achievement and I'm going to look at math right here with this one. In math, our Black African American students, our elementary students from 23-24 to 24-25 had an increase of 2.6. Our middle schools, 7, which when I took a look at that data is just amazing to see that amount of growth from one year to the next. And high school, plus 2.9 in the subgroup of our African American Black students. We take a look at our elementary specifically, we saw growth in math in our IEP and ELL populations. And then in middle school, we saw growth in all 3 of those subgroups, IEP, FRL, and ELL. So again, that's focusing on math in particular with those data sets. So,
thank you. The other one is that I saw up on the chart about illustrative math, and one of the things that I've heard a lot from parents that I spend time with is that it's just such a large deviation away from the standard norm that pretty much anyone born before 1995 learned math. And I'm just wondering what kind of outreach we have done to parents to make sure that they can help their children with math when they bring it home, or have we looked into it at all?
Yeah, I'm going to turn on the mic that's not turning on, so I'll just go ahead and speak. In terms of, the new materials that we use, math is math. However, the way that we're approaching it and the way that students are engaged in the learning does feel different than ways that many of us in this room did learn that. And so some individual buildings have done math nights where they've had families come in and engage in some math games and are showing different practices. services. However, after a discussion in some articles, I think that Superintendent Degner had sent to us last year was some school districts that were engaging in math nights district-wide. And so that's something that Lucas and I have been talking about with our curriculum team of how could we engage our families so that they feel that they can support their students at home. Everywhere from, we've talked about videos, we've talked about math nights that could possibly be held, larger events here. However, we know that families are more inclined to go to their individual elementary schools. And so those are things that we're continuing to think through. We do have, all of our buildings that are Title I do have literacy nights every year. So we've talked about ways to incorporate some of those math strategies and math activities into those as well.
And one of the things that looking at secondary specific with, IM, the illustrative math is great for the teachers, but our administrators need to be just as knowledgeable what's going on in the classroom. So what we're doing at the middle school level this year is pulling teams from all of our middle schools that it's consisted of instructional coaches, principals, as well as their math kind of content lead within their building. We're pulling them a few different times throughout the year. So what does it mean to be an instructional leader? When you're doing walkthroughs in a math classroom, what does that look different than going in another classroom? So really trying to make them more knowledgeable of what math looks like in this day and age compared to what maybe they had seen in a classroom previous.
Thank you. And then just the last question with pre-K, and I know we didn't have really a concrete answer to it at the last meeting last week, but are we projecting to spend any general fund on that for this academic year? Any general fund money?
No, and sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
Okay.
The answer
Thank
is
you.
no since we started it, and it'll continue to be no.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick question. I mean, I have other questions, but knowing that our Continuum of Services presentation is still coming, they might fit better there, so just be ready, maybe. The one question that I do have that fit in here is about Say Something. Is there a breakdown you can provide where those reports are coming, elementary versus middle school versus high school versus kids, staff? Okay, so if we can get that, maybe upload it to this. I would like to see that. Were there any other questions or comments from directors? All right, thank you team so much for the presentation, I appreciate it. Next up, we will move to FMP 2.3 presentation.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks, President Malone. Welcoming Kurt up to the podium here. He's going to walk through some of the work we've been moving forward in FMP 2.3 since your approval here late spring, early summer, I guess was the time frame on that. We've done a community engagement meeting with the West High community that he'll talk about as well, but you'll have some information here about all three of our comprehensive high school campuses and that work. So with that, Kurt, go ahead.
Thank you all for the opportunity tonight to give an update on FMP 2.3. One of the slides coming up here will talk about the approval at the end of June, and that feels so far away here as we're at the end of September. So we've made some progress, but every week's a new week, and we keep making progress on these things. So just a quick overview of the timeline. Starting in the spring of 2021 with FMP 2.0 community engagement, and rolled into April of 22, where the board at that time approved 2.0 timeline with a $270+ million budget. Expenditures to date and in progress for that were about $156 million, leaving a rough estimate remaining of $114,700. So that's the budget we have for FMP 2.3. That's what drives that. FMP 2.2. Which turned into 2.3, again, starting back in April with approval of FMP 2.0. Then there was an athletic study commission, work with the city of Coralville on the pool, the fine arts study, which all then informed what became FMP 2.3, again approved at the June 10th, 2025 board meeting. So as far as engagement, a lot of work has been done within our administrators and teachers and coaches to help inform what this shape this plan took. So this was just a brief rundown of all the engagement that was done prior to the passage back in June. So one of the important things that we're trying to communicate, especially through these community engagement sessions, is our goals for FMP 2.3. And we kind of have 6 guiding principles as we look at each project and the merits of each one. So first and foremost, we want to enhance our student experience and participation. I think that's why a lot of us are in this and want to do for our kids to help them have a great experience in school, whether it's performing for fine arts, athletic field, or even in the classroom. So no surprise there. Second, we want to support excellence in programs and instruction. My staff, if they haven't heard it from me yet, they'll hear it eventually. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. And so we don't just want to do it, we want to do it as best as we can. Third, ensuring the safety and compliance and functionality. So that also should go without say that we want our practice facilities, rehearsal facilities, all to be safe for our students so that they can compete and perform the whole year round. Fourth, maximizing facility use and scheduling efficiency. This is a big one for our administrators, our ADs, and our coaches. Certainly you're limited by the facilities you have for practices or other performances even, and so providing additional space that can be utilized, first and foremost, in my mind, helps our kids get home sooner, right? So if we're not wanting baseball to have open gym at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night, you know, maybe if we have the field house that we'll talk about in a bit, maybe they can go in at 6 and get home a little earlier and have more time for schoolwork and family time. Finally, promoting community engagement and social identity, or school identity, I'm sorry. That's obviously a big part of our component here in Iowa City Community Schools. As I've been here the past few months, it's very obvious our schools are the centers of our community, right? And so we want to do right by our communities and be a beacon for their use as well. And then planning for long-term sustainability and growth, right? So one of the things we've talked about, the possibility of even adding different activities because we'll have more space available for other things. So I won't let that cat out of the bag because I'm not privy to all those conversations, but the additional space will allow us to at least have those conversations. So we'll roll through the projects here really quick, starting with fine arts projects. City High School, working on Little Theater upgrades. One of the things we heard from the staff and through the fine arts study was that if that space were updated, it would get more use. And so we're just getting rolling on that. One of the things that's been thrown out that we're going to explore is leveling out the floor. Right now it has tiered seating. So not really a black box concept, maybe a black box light, if you will. But leveling out the floors allows more different groups and variations of furniture to use the space. And so the City High administration is really excited about the possibility of that because with any high school, if you have the adequate space, they'll fill it with the use. City High School auditorium upgrades, I believe we approved phase 1 cost for this earlier tonight as part of the consent agenda. So this upgrades the lighting within the auditorium, both within the house space and for on the stage for the technical lighting. That project is slated to begin in December, and so they'll be displaced for a little bit. I've heard they've made arrangements to perform at another facility. And I want to make clear we're not removing any of the historical lighting, so like the chandeliers and that stuff that kind of make that space what it is, that's going to stay, but more of the technical lighting and some of the house lighting will be upgraded. And then a fine arts edition, we're several years away from kicking this one off, but the thought is providing an additional band room. Right now there's a operable partition between the 2 band rooms for City High, which is not ideal. And certainly their programs have grown, so providing an additional one, so then the one that's split in half can become another larger one, and then have a upstairs multi-purpose rehearsal space that can house show choir or other groups, maybe dance, that need a multifunctional space. Liberty High School Fine Arts Edition, this is that black box that was presented a couple months ago. Obviously, Liberty High does not have 2 performance spaces, so that's not equitable to Weston City, and so this will bring them up on par with their peers. And we'll be excited to get this one. It'll be a different experience for kids and for spectators, because as you can see, we can do multiple stage configurations, it'll be exciting, and there'll be a lot more technical opportunities for kids to learn there too. Auditorium upgrades at Liberty High School. It's hard to believe we would be talking about anything at Liberty High School being at the end of its useful life, but you can imagine in 5 years at the end of FMP 2.3, technology has greatly changed since that auditorium opened. So just wanting to make sure our kids have the best equipment possible. This is planned for that. And it's also, some of that fund will also go toward some of the support spaces like the scene shop or the current space where show choir is rehearsing, which I've been told and I've seen that if you're on the top tier of risers, depending on what your arm movements are for the move, you can't hit ductwork. And so part of this project will help alleviate that. West High auditorium renovations. This is probably one of the more complex projects within the whole plan. Not to make a cliche term, but we're literally raising the roof on the stage. They don't have any rigging in comparison to what Liberty and City have, and so they can't necessarily like fly in sets or swap out scenery quite quickly like you could if you had a full fly loft. And so we'll be taking over that auditorium for a year once the project is ready to get started under construction. And it'll be a different space and a different experience for those kids. And I think most people in the building, when we talked with them of all the things we can do to improve fine arts, I think this was the #1 request among all the directors and everybody. So this is one of the first projects that we'll get rolling on in earnest, and excited to get that one underway. Similarly to the Little Theater at City High, the Little Theater at West High, we were just kind of told, it could just use some updates, new technology, maybe new seating, new flooring, some finish upgrades. So not a huge project, but will definitely make a difference within that building. Moving on to athletics projects, City High baseball and softball renovation / relocation. So this one's probably 70–75% complete. If you're not familiar with it, both baseball was playing at Mercer Park. Now softball is moving over there as well. This project's being done in conjunction with the City of Iowa City for a different project for the whole Mercer Park area. It's going pretty well, and it'll be a nice facility when it's done. City High soccer turf replacement and expansion and field lighting. So the turf, I think this was the first turf field installed in the district, and so it's at the end or nearing the end of its useful life. When it was installed, they didn't leave enough sidelines space out of bounds, and so we're not able to always host playoff games on this surface. I think this year, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, they had to play at the university for maybe a semifinal, a quarterfinal game, and so we will push the hill back and replace the turf surface and provide that extra space on the far sideline that butts up to the football bleachers back there, and then provide lighting. And so they'll have a better scheduling ability now that they can play a little longer. Bates Field and Track. Similar to the turf surface, the track surfaces have a life expectancy, and so we're nearing that for Bates Field in the next couple of years, or at least Bates Track, I'm sorry. The grass field will plan to recrown and provide new goalposts to provide a better drainage within that whole field, but it is planned to stay a grass field, and so just want to make everyone aware of that specific caveat. We'll have to do that in 2 phases. We'll have to redo the field and then have that ready for fall football season, and the track will have to follow in that fall to be ready for spring track season. So kind of a complex little shuffle you have to do there. Liberty High School, their soccer field did not have any lighting when it was installed. I believe you guys maybe have approved that one as well tonight under consent agenda. So looking forward to getting that one underway, also providing more scheduling abilities for them as well. Again, it's hard to talk about anything at Liberty High School being at the end of its life, but same thing with the turf. Their turf has a padding underneath it when it was installed. What we've been told is that padding can stay. It's just the quote-unquote carpet on top that has to be replaced, and so it'll just be a surface change. in that regard. West High School, similarly, their turf field, I think, was second to cities in terms of date of install. So that one also at the end of its useful life. We'll actually be adding the pad on this one that's out at West to try to help with athlete safety. But then similarly to Bates Field, we'll do the same shuffle of redo the field, come back later, do the track. That way nobody should be displaced for a season. Maybe practices are displaced, but not any competitions. West High School baseball and softball field relocation. So this is one that we're continuing to work through. We were hoping to get started this fall, but it may be at this spring, depending on some complexity of the project. So this is the current plan, which shows obviously relocating both softball and baseball to the area just south of the tennis courts and the parking lot. We're still working through the exact layout of these fields, and we'll communicate with the neighbors as we develop this plan. Right now, nothing has changed from what was presented to them, but we're working through what that looks like. This is just a section view of that baseball field, and so this is kind of cut through the neighbor's property. This line you see here is the property line, and the red line is the existing grade that is out there along the edge, and the blue line is what is proposed. And so you can see the current plan shows this would be the softball field, kind of sinking it in. And so hopefully that would help with some neighbor concerns of privacy and whatnot, that you've got a berm in your backyard that comes to a point and then the field goes down within that. So we'll continue to communicate with the neighbors as we have updates. We just haven't had any significant updates since our meeting in August with them. This one's a mouthful depending on what you want to call it. The multi-purpose indoor practice facilities, sometimes known as the field house. So these are independent building at each campus. We've engaged with Substance Architecture. We're meeting with them every 2 weeks with the ADs and the principals. Our most recent milestone that we achieved was we feel like we've got the sites on each campus noted. And so that's kind of why we were holding back on Liberty and City community engagement sessions, because we wanted to have that piece landed so we could then go to the neighborhoods and say, this is what the impact will be. And so we'll get those scheduled here in the next few weeks. They're kind of going to go in dominoes. So West will be the first one, then followed closely by City, and then followed by Liberty. So I know the possibilities as we have these meetings and talk about all the things that need in terms of, lines for baseball, lines for softball, marching band, what storage would be helpful for band, some of those things. I think we're going to see a real boon to what our activities can do within these buildings, both fine arts and athletics. So we're pretty excited to keep rolling on this. Weston Liberty Pool Project, just a reminder that we've made a funding commitment of $14.5 million to that project. I know the city of Coralville is working on funding for that, and we're certainly excited to get this one going and have a nice new facility for Weston Liberty for their swim teams. Miscellaneous projects, these are the ones that maybe don't necessarily directly impact the student experience, but some things that just need to get done either to facilitate other projects or kind of fix some other issues that might be going on. So nothing extremely exciting from a student perspective, but work that still need to be included within FMP 2.3. And then district-wide, we have money allocated for technology and infrastructure, outdoor classrooms, playground equipment, some work at physical plant, and then the Dream Accelerator. So next steps, we obviously held the West High Community Engagement Session on August 7th. And like I said, we'll continue to communicate with those stakeholders as those plans develop. City and Liberty will get scheduled. And then internal stakeholders, coaches, sponsors, et cetera, we include them as the projects come up, right? So we were over at West High the other day, and I talked with Mitch about who he'd want to have included in the auditorium meetings as that project gets rolling. So we kind of leave that up to the buildings of who they think is most appropriate to join those, and then we include them in our project meetings as well. And with that, I'll field any questions.
All right, thank you. Floor is open, Director, for any questions or comments.
Thanks for the presentation. Just a quick question about the West High Fine Arts space. Do we have any idea where their performances will be during that year that they're working on the auditorium?
I think they're trying to get to the Coralville Performing Arts Center, but I don't want to speak out of turn and say that's definitely what's
Finalized
happening.
yet? Okay, just curious.
They are, I will say they are working on it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I love Dwayne's Excel spreadsheet, but it is kind of hard to digest those timelines. So I really like how you've laid out the specific projects. I think it's very digestible for the community to say, hey, I'm really interested in this. When's it going to happen?
Sure.
And it's all right there. So thank you for a great presentation. A couple questions. For the pool, under student impact, it didn't list that West and Liberty would be able to split their swim teams. Is that still a go with the pool project? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that hadn't changed. And maybe, anyway. It also would not be an athletics facility meeting if I did not talk about the soccer turf at City High. And again, point out that City is the only soccer field in our comprehensive high schools that has turf instead of grass. Is City reaching out to the soccer families of the players who actually play on this as stakeholders to get input from them? I mean, because if the soccer parents all want turf, then let them have turf. But that's not personally the feedback I'm getting from those stakeholders. And I'm concerned that the school is not reaching out to those families and community members in developing this plan.
Sure. Yeah, we can certainly follow up with Mr. Bacon and Mr. Lala and verify that those conversations have happened.
Yeah, and I understand that the school has an interest in having turf as part of somewhere on the ground so that and they don't want to turf Bates, so if the rain happens and they can't practice on Bates, they want to be able to move those football practices up to the turf. But I would point out that with the building of the field house, that is going to create that indoor turf space that can be used as so I just... And that field house at City is the first one that's going to be built according to the cycle. So it looks like there's only like an 18-month period of time where there would be no turf at City. And so I would think that, I mean, we could just cross our fingers for no rain for those 18 months. Again, if the soccer families wanted to play on grass.
Sure.
Yeah.
Director Williams, the one thing I would add is that last point that you made, or that second point you made about the not turfing Bates, that is one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from the schools, is that they would like an outdoor turf facility, right? And so while at Liberty and at West, their football fields are turf and their soccer fields are grass, that's just the reverse there. And so I hear what you're saying, and we'll definitely get that feedback, but I think it's, if they want to grass that, where do we find that outdoor piece in addition to the indoor practice facility?
Well, listen, and I get that they don't want to turf Bates, and that's fine, but the people who play on the turf, the soccer players, are the ones seeing the impact of the turf versus grass. And so if the football and marching band wants turf, but at the expense of the health and safety of our soccer players, I'm not sure that that's an acceptable decision. Again, if the soccer families are okay playing on turf, then let them have turf. But that's just not the feedback I'm getting. And I don't think that they should have to play in more unsafe conditions because they want turf, but they don't want to put turf on their football field.
Sure.
Any additional questions? Go ahead, Director Lingo.
I would just like to echo Lisa's point, if indeed that the soccer team wants grass, the soccer team should get grass. If they don't want grass, then they don't want grass. Yeah. But that would make the most sense because it's a soccer field and not a football practice field.
And I would point out, it's not a backup football practice field.
Backup football practice field.
Actually,
the soccer practice field.
Thank you. Just have a couple questions. So maybe Lisa kind of just answered that, or Director Williams did, but why do we have different surfaces on the football fields? I mean, it would appear that maybe one of them would be cheaper than the other. Why not use it on all facilities, or is that?
I'm gonna just jump in here, kind of back to this point you guys are making, and then maybe some from what I understand about the history of that, probably how we ended up differently. So I would say, I think what you'll hear from the campus is it'd be important to have an artificial surface and a natural grass playing surface. I understand and appreciate the concern about soccer, right? If that's not where it is, I think we would have to problem solve then where is still a practice field, an outdoor practice field that is turf on City High, right? I don't think we'll get consensus from that school community. They'd be okay with just natural grass and the other two schools having an outdoor turf field somewhere. If it's not soccer, fine. You know, we'll get that feedback. We'll talk to them. Then we'll probably just need to consider what alternative option we would have there. So I just want you to kind of be thinking about that one. And then I think the history on that, Director Lingo, is that Kurt kind of mentioned that City High was the first to get an artificial surface, and I think that's where they were able to get it. And so it happened to be that it was soccer, that it was off of the football field, and that was the arrangement made at that time. And then when other, I guess, administrative teams got involved, then they looked for their opportunities on how to do it on their campus, and West chose their football field. And then when we designed Liberty High School, it was decided to put that at the football stadium there as well. So I'm not sure outside of that reasoning, I would have any better information on that. I don't know if Chase would have anything from being around here too, but.
I could say one example of where that turf is advantageous is at West. If you have a really rainy day and they can't play soccer on the grass field, they play it on the turf football field. That's happened quite a few times, actually, so it is nice to have it.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, you have the band out there too, I'm sure. Yeah. I know we talked about the field houses, but there's just a lot of impact points. Probably another conversation, you know, as a follow-up. So we'll first get that feedback about soccer. I think that's a great question. So
I remember President Malone asked to push up the playgrounds way back.
Outdoor classrooms.
Outdoor classrooms, not, okay. So and part of this is upgrading playgrounds, correct? Or how does that, how much of it's going to classrooms? How much is it going to playgrounds?
Outdoor classrooms and playground equipment is $2.4 million.
Okay. And when will that get started, or is that?
So it's ongoing. We're we have 13 outdoor classrooms completely done. 2 are in progress, then the rest would be in planning or on a timeline. So we're about halfway done with outdoor classrooms, and that's complete between secondary and elementary.
And how, as far as playgrounds go, I mean, I was at one last week, and it wasn't in the greatest shape that I've seen compared to some of the newer ones. How do you decide when to upgrade those?
So they're on a life cycle budget. Okay. So typically, I think it's about 10 years. We have a process. We meet with the building administration. We usually pull in the PTO so parents can have input on it. And then it's about a 6 month to a year worth of planning, and then they get installed in the summer. So we usually try to do between 2 and 3 campuses every summer.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add here, and I hesitate to irritate my fellow board members Lingo and Williams, but I wonder if we could pay some attention to the thoughts and opinions, professional opinions of the athletic directors at the different schools when we're looking at questions about the surface of a field, whether it should be turf or grass or something else. The opinions of parents like me are important. Sometimes we need to be questioned.
I'm concerned that the athletic directors are prioritizing football over other sports, including women's sports. That's my concern.
Oh, women's sports? That would not be.
I mean, that's my concern, is that we're turfing. I mean, there are studies that say turf is more dangerous to play on than grass.
Yeah.
And we're prioritizing the needs of the football team to have additional turf because they don't want to turf their field over the well-being of our boys and girls who play soccer That's my concern.
Oh, I
And
thought-
that's my
sure.
concern with the athletic
Sure.
directors being the sole input, which is why I just would hope that we would talk to the families who have been involved in these sports and watching their kids play on these sports for, in some cases, over a decade, and are high-level consumers of what keeps their kids safe.
Thank you.
Okay. Part of the problem of going last with questions is most of them get asked already, but I do have one. The playground equipment replacement, and I know you said you bring in PTO for input. Only input, or are we allowing PTOs to add to the budget of playground equipment?
I'm gonna lean on Superintendent Degner on that one.
Yeah, if my understanding is still correct, we do allow PTOs to add on some pieces to the playground. We have a standard that we provide, and then there are some possibilities for extra pieces that the PTO can fundraise for. Any additions you'd provide there, Chase?
Just that we did have a committee several years ago, and my understanding is Ben goes back to those committees when it's time for a school to be up in the life cycle, and so we do try to make sure that the pieces that are selected are accessible for students, and so we kind of go with that inclusive design. I do believe that the PTOs can provide some enhancements, but it's more limited because we do want to provide that equity across our different playgrounds for all of our different schools. Of course, we want. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh.
I'm starting to get towards the late hour here, and I'm just jumping in. But I was just saying it's got to stay in that scope, just like you're saying, right? So yes, they can fundraise for it, but it's got to stay in the scope of the inclusive design.
So with that, they can end up with larger playgrounds than, say, a school that doesn't have a PTO that can raise money as much as.
I think we would have conversations with them about what's reasonable to add. We're not going to let them put a whole, a third of a, playground addition onto it or something. So we're talking like an extra slide or something to that effect is what we've seen and experienced that they might provide to that playground.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you so much for the presentation. And that takes us to our last presentation of the night, which is the Continuum of Services. And Superintendent Degner, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, Deputy Superintendent Ramey comes up here to the microphone. So we wanted to follow up here and talk some practical application of our Continuum of Services. I'd want to say thank you to our staff members from Coralville Central that have stuck around here tonight. I know it's been a long meeting and that you're still sticking it out. So I had a chance to talk with them a little bit last week. And I'd also say thank you to the people that participated in the comment portion tonight. I think you see the passion for our staff and also the passion our staff have for our kids. And we have a responsibility with this dual commitment to make sure we serve all kids in the district at a high level and that our staff feel that they're working in an environment that is that they can be safe and confident in as well. And so as we do that with over 14,000 kids and over 2,000 staff members, there's complexities in how we figure out the right answer to those questions and how it gets actionalized out into our school building. So again, thank you to the folks that have stuck around. We kind of have three different parts to this presentation, and tonight I'm also operating with the assumption this isn't the last time we'll talk about it, that some of these are big pieces for us to work on and to move forward. Maybe the other lens I'd provide onto it is this is already a couple years of work in, right? And so we're not starting from zero. This is something we've been working on for the past couple years when we looked at how this happens in application. And so we know that's still some work in front of us to do as well. So with that, Chase, go for it.
Great, thank you, and good evening. And as the superintendent said, we really do want to take kind of a practical view on some of these pieces this evening. Everything we're going to present tonight, we've brought to you in some form or fashion. A lot of times we talk at the board in high-level policy, or we talk in kind of the theories or how we look at a program from a systematic standpoint. But tonight we just want to, as Matt said, talk more practically about how these are implemented at the building level and some of the work that's taken place and where we continue to make our system enhancements in the work that we do. We came to you with a presentation on our continuum services in the spring, and even in that period of time, we continue to move some of this work forward. And so you see here several different areas, and we've talked about a number of them tonight, whether it was through one of the presentations, and of course, as Superintendent mentioned, some of the great community comments we had this evening. And so this work has been ongoing, and we continue to lean into it. And this evening, plan to spend some time talking about not only where we've been, but where we're going. I'm not doing this presentation by myself. Obviously, there's a lot of people that do this work and carry this work for us. And so it's kind of going to be a little bit of a popcorn presentation this evening. So folks might talk from their seats, or they might come up to one of the microphones as we do this work collectively and together. And really where we are going to start this evening is taking a look at our service delivery model. And we continue to come back to this because we understand it's a critical piece of what we're doing in our school buildings. It's something that we talked to you all about earlier in the spring. It's something that we've spent considerable time talking with our administrators about, and will continue to talk with our administrators about. Director Finch asked a great question about the teacher voice in our IEP process, and so we'll get more into that in the presentation this evening, as this is an ongoing area for us as we not only do that work with our administrators, but then also our teachers as well. And of course, Director Reedy actually leads this work for us in the district, so I'm going to turn it over to her to talk a little bit.
Thank you. I don't know. Yeah, okay, thank you. So again, we brought some of this information to you in April, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit more about it tonight. One thing that's amazing about the school district we work in is that we are a public school system, and that means we take all kids as they are, and that's a privilege. And with that, that means that we need to have a robust continuum of services that's able to meet the needs of all of the students that come through our doors. And so our service delivery model is something we've worked on with you over the past 7 years to ensure that we have a variety of ways to meet the needs of all of our students. Within our service delivery model, that is intended for students who are eligible individuals, meaning that they have, like Matt said, it's getting late, that they have students with, there are students with IEPs. And so Chase, if you go to the next slide, within our enrollment matrix, we have our students weighted or leveled is the language we use. This is the makeup of our students with IEPs as of last April. I do want to highlight this data is from when we presented to you in the spring. And so this is the makeup of our eligible students, IEPs by weighting. Additionally, some other data we had shared with you is within our students with IEPs, the way we look at their student day through an IEP is the amount of time spent in the general education classroom versus pulled out into other settings. So this demonstrates the way students' days currently are spent. Again, if they have an IEP, the amount of time they spend in gen ed versus pulled out into other settings. So as we've highlighted, we have a robust continuum of services, something we've worked really hard to develop. And an important part of that is then making sure we have the resources wrapped around to support that. One thing I'm really proud of with our system is I say we are a resource-dense system. I've worked in a lot of different educational settings, and I'm proud to serve in a district that really wraps around its systems to support staff, students, to meet the best possible outcomes. So we have some things we wanted to highlight here. We have 150 special education teachers. We did update this data for you, so you'll notice the numbers are a little bit different from our April presentation. We wanted to give you real data that's reflective of today's staff and supports. So we have 150 special education teachers. That means that our average roster size is, for every one special education teacher, 12 students with IEPs. I highlight that because the UEN average is 1 to 21. So we are really wrapping around our students with IEPs, making sure that they have a low ratio of teacher to student support. In addition to that, we have 513 roughly special education paraeducators. We're going to talk more about this in a little bit, but one thing we've really invested in is our behavior interventionists. This is something I'm excited to highlight because we are unique in the state in our approach to wrapping around our buildings and systems with this role. We've actually had 2 other UEN schools come and meet with us and want to invest in this model and have asked to duplicate a lot of the structures we've put in place and are investing in that this year. So we are at 45 special education behavior interventionists. That is a 1:40 ratio with our students or a 1:3 ratio with our teachers. And then our lead support teachers is another support role that we've invested in to increase the support to our teachers and implementation of plans. Specific to those roles, this slide highlights really the way they serve our system. So all of our resources and support should touch our students, right? That's the impact point for us. And so we've invested in, again, those roles that are going to directly impact our student outcomes. So we talked about the ratio. We have 150 special education teachers, about 513 special education paraeducators invested in serving our students at the building level. We then employ 45 Tier 3 behavior interventionists who are working with our building teams to implement, support, coach, model our student behavior plans. Those are for our students with IEPs, but also our students who do not have IEPs but have a Tier 3 plan. And then we've invested in increasing our special ed lead support teachers. Those roles support and coach our teachers and paras in creating those conditions where we're implementing plans with high degrees of fidelity, problem solving, coaching, working through troubling or challenging situations to be able to move towards better outcomes. And then our special education coordinators are additional supports at our system level to work with buildings and teams, specifically when cases become complex or additional supports or resources are required.
Thanks, Ashley. So a lot of times when we present information, we sometimes present things in a silo. So we came and we talked about the Continuum service and we explained where we were and where we wanted to go. And we didn't really connect it to a lot of the other work that's going on. And when we talk about practically speaking, that's one of the things that we want to do this evening. And a little bit later, you're going to hear from Eliza, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the work we're doing with SEBH, PBIS, and how that fits back into this. But we also know that through some of the comments earlier on, there's questions about some of the discipline and how things like our collective bargaining agreement, changes in state law and board policy also play into these. And when we were together back in July and I gave the legislative update, this was one of the laws that we talked about, we talked about House File 604 and its connection to District Policy 503.8. But again, then at that point, we talked really about, hey, these are updates in the laws, here's the things that we've talked, here are the requirements that our folks need to abide by, whether it's teachers reporting incidents to their principals and the requirement that the principals contact parents within 24 hours. But again, how does that connect to the work that we're doing on a day-to-day basis and the other tools that we have in place? And so Laura talked a little bit about this earlier in teaching and learning. And so I'm going to ask her again to kind of talk about how does this connect to our CBA and to threat assessment. And so how do these changes in the law interplay with a number of these other factors that we also utilize as we're looking at how it functions in our schools?
Thank you, Chase. Can you all hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, directors, our comprehensive behavior approach, basically it guides all student discipline. So any behavior infractions, our administrators are able to go to our comprehensive behavior approach guidelines and it basically helps guide them in regards to like how to determine levels. So there's multiple factors taken into consideration, such as student age, grade level, whether or not they have special needs or are exceptional in certain ways, and then also the severity of actions, the degree of harm, like whether or not it was repeated. So all those things come into play there. In addition to other processes and notification that take place when needed are like bullying and harassment investigations, Title IX investigations, and then more recently, CSTAG, our Comprehensive School Threat Assessment guidelines will kick into play when necessary. But it all starts with the comprehensive behavior approach. And so again, it's like, I don't know how many of you were part of our redesigning it, but you might remember that piece. We had a what do you call it, like a steering committee that met with all of our stakeholders to kind of make sure that we were looking at it from a restorative approach and make sure that we were looking at it from a equity approach, right? And so we revamped that together, but so you're familiar with how to look at the levels and the suggestions that we provide to administrators in regards to alternatives to suspension when necessary. But there are circumstances where, students need to take some time off. And so it's still guiding them with how many days that should be, what that could look like, so on and so forth. That one more thing I wanted to add, though, is we're in thinking about this in regards to like a continuum of services, we are partnering with some community like resources to help even some of our students who are what I consider more in crisis, and that's kind of what we were hearing, like testimony of some of that, and and during the community comment, and so we're working with even like community COMM, like the community. The City of North Liberty. We have just different community partners that we're working with to try to help even, some of our more severe cases. So we're not ignoring that we have some growth areas. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So you're probably like, great, Chase, like we see these different pieces and how you're putting them together, but really how are you taking feedback you get, or how are you learning from what you're learning, as our former director, Ms. Coleman, said during her comments today. And so we want to spend some time talking about system enhancements and what those things we are looking at and the work that we've started in several of these areas and focused on building on over the next year or the times to come. And you see those 4 areas there that we want to speak with you tonight. And as Matt said, some of this work's ongoing. This is a representation of work that we are really focused on. And so I'm going to hand it back to Ashley to talk a little bit about the Continuum PD. Back to that question again from Director Finch about not only looking at where maybe that admin voice is, but how do we lean more into some of that teacher voice in some of these areas?
Yes, so again, appreciate the question earlier and hope to draw maybe more attention to how we are aware of some of those gaps and what we're investing in to improve our outcomes and our engagement as team members. So I sometimes forget because I could probably recite the DDSTP to you without looking at it if someone wanted me to. No one wants that. But what we're reminded of is that when something is right in front of us and it's our sole focus, it's easy to get to think that everyone has that same level of attention to it and understanding of it. And we've appreciated the opportunity to engage with our different stakeholders to better understand where there is a high level of understanding and therefore implementation, and where there's gaps in understanding. And so some of the work we've done is working with our administrators. We met with all of our administrators for the last 2 summers to engage with them around their role as the LEA in the IEP team meeting process, how they engage in that work, their role to allocating resources, their role to complex situations and student cases, and what their responsibilities are to that, and how to navigate the systems and supports we have in place, as well as to give us feedback on where are our fail points or where do we need to reassess those systems and improve our processes. So that's work we've continued the last 2 summers. In addition to that, we did some intensive work with our special education case managers this summer around what it means to be a case manager in ICCSD. What does that responsibility and role look like as a case manager to student need, aligning services? How do you engage in data-informed decision-making? We've now been engaging with our counselors and coaches at the elementary level, again, looking at their special education systems, case management, and how they engage as IEP team members, when they may serve in different roles and what that looks like. And then we are looking forward to continuing to provide ongoing learning on our curricular PD days that we design high quality learning for our special education case managers, where we're really focused again on that special education service delivery and supporting our students, engaging in problem solving, how do you intervene when students have challenging behavior, et cetera. And then November 4th, we have a district-wide PD in the morning, and we are going to be providing some targeted learning for our general education teachers around their role in the IEP process. Because while we value and recognize them as valuable team members, what we've learned is there's a great degree, there's a continuum, I would say, of understanding in what their role is and the level of engagement they may or may not have in an IEP team meeting. So we're excited to continue that learning there.
Thanks, Ashley. And as Matt said earlier, we would look at this as an opportunity for growth for us as a district. And I think that part of having an honest dialogue and moving the district forward in the way that we want to, which is for the best of all our students and our staff, we have to be willing to say, okay, this is an area where we need to lean into, that maybe we haven't leaned into it enough in the past. And this is also a good time to point out, ICEA and Brady, and we always mention Brady, but I see April Kelly in the back, and ICEA is full of great teacher leaders that help provide us that feedback on some of these pieces. And so we'd like to incorporate their voice into this and where we need to take this work. And Matt and I'll talk a little bit more about staff feedback as we get to the end of the presentation. But this is something that we noticed last spring and have started to lean into and will continue to do. Because if we don't have a better understanding from our building-based staff, teachers especially, all that work we talked about, the continuum of services several minutes ago, it's hard to bring that to fruition, right? It cannot be something that's just top down. It has to be something that permeates through the entire organization. And so leaning into this professional development piece is very important for us if we want to make good on some of those things we said earlier about the continuum of services. And a big part of that also is really reviewing the data that we have coming out of that. And Eliza's going to talk to that here a little bit about some data review things that we have ongoing and are going to start to enhance. But she's also going to talk a little bit what I said about SEBH and some PBIS as we get into that conversation.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay? This microphone's not really working. And so a multi-tiered system of support, especially around social emotional behavioral health, or SEBH, isn't new. And so we've been utilizing supports like PBIS, which is our positive behaviors, interventions, and supports, and all those tiers. However, what we've really wanted to do is think about all the different ways that we're supporting students in the general ed classroom, maybe in a small tiered environment where students need something a little bit beyond what everybody is receiving, all the way up to students that are really receiving that individualized and targeted support. And so what this graphic that our student support team had created last year at the end of the year to use for this year is just thinking about all the different things that we are doing to support social emotional behavioral health and trying to make those connections so that when we are supporting teachers and teams back in the classroom when they're struggling with and they're like, I need some support for my whole entire classroom, we can see how our effective classroom practices, those what we call our SEL practices, how those are aligning with universal screening, how we're doing that to get a good measure of how our students are doing and how they're feeling in their learning environment. Top of our universal instruction, we, as I actually made I'll make a connection to what we had talked about in our teaching and learning report earlier, was just making sure that with those priority standards and our proficiency scales, we did the same thing for all those SEL competencies. And so that we are having, we're looking at what we're expecting our students to be able to do and then providing interventions when they're unable to do that independently and they need more skill instruction. And so this graphic just shows how, see that blue around the outside, like the new art and science of teaching, how we are providing the environment and equipping our teachers with tools so that they can support students in the general ed classroom and then adding on supports for when that's not enough. And so you can see all the way up to tier 3 where the FBA, which is a functional behavior assessment and their behavior intervention plan, when we might see moving into that. And then if students need additional support outside of those pieces is when we are really utilizing Ashley and her team in special education. And so this graphic just kind of shows how all of those layers lay on top of each other to ensure that we're meeting the social, emotional, behavioral health needs of each student. Chase had mentioned a little bit about some of the data monitoring that we're doing, and to be honest with you, a lot of this isn't brand new, but it is certainly refined. She has no idea I'm going to say this, so it might be slightly embarrassing, but Carrie, who's back here, had the opportunity to go into her classroom and have a conversation. And actually, a lot of the things that she was saying and I was hearing led to some of the work that we started in the summer and then into this fall. So every building at the building level will review their data, whether it's in a student support team or MTSS, which we had talked about, that multi-tiered system of support. They're reviewing their behavior data, they're reviewing attendance data, they're reviewing their number of students that are receiving those tiered supports that were on that previous slide. And we were checking in with individual teams in terms of, do they need anything? Well, they only know what they know. And so we have decided, as our teaching and learning team, we meet twice a month, that we are going to be and have started looking at this district-wide data and honestly operating ourselves as that student support team. Instead of looking at individual student data, we're looking at buildings and identifying trends. So for example, we know at the beginning of the year, any of you that are in early childhood, we know at the beginning of the year, the kids that have the most office referrals are typically kindergartners, as they're learning school rules, they're learning how to be a member of a learning community. There was one that when we were looking at data, we realized it was a little discrepant from some of the other buildings. And so it would allow us to then connect with the building principal, connect with our PBIS team, our behavior interventionists, and they're going and meeting with that team to think through how they can best support them so they don't feel like that's something that they're doing all on their own. So these 5 data points are some of the data sets. They're not the ones that we're limited to, but ones that we are committed to looking at monthly is our office referrals and resolution. So the resolution would be once an office referral is submitted, that for kind of lay people term is the consequence. So what happened as a result of that office referral? And so reviewing those 2 pieces, and which will help us continue to review our CBA and our disciplinary practices. Academic performance, that's where Carmen and her team will provide where our ongoing academic performance is looking as we look at our universal screeners that we use 3 times a year. Attendance and truancy, continue to monitor that. Our special education eligibility, if we are seeing and what rates we're seeing our students become eligible for special education, or we're seeing students that are no longer needing those services and are exiting from that, we want to look at that more closely, as well as our service delivery model utilization. A service delivery model of the DDSDP is only as good as it is utilized. And so as Ashley mentioned earlier, making sure that everybody that has a role on that IEP team understands how they can support those team decisions and make sure that their unique perspective of that student is heard on that team. We want to continue to monitor how that is being utilized in our building. And so at the beginning of this presentation, there were those graphs that were blue that I talked about how that DDSDP is utilized in the building. We're going to continue to look at that at a deeper level. And so they will also be expanded from there. We plan to identify themes, trends, and bring those back through our regular channels at Admin Council. We are with all of our administrators in that setting once a month, and then with our level people, Luke and I meet with them more frequently than that, but we can start to think about how we might solve some of those issues that are looking a little bit more globally, systemically. So how might we solve those? How might we work together to continue with our goal to ensure that everybody is getting what they need? But then that data review, as we're doing that, let's just get down to the individual building level and say, okay, this is a little bit of an outlier. How can we go in and provide direct support to building teams?
Thanks, Eliza.
I know it's right here in front of me, so I don't know why I'm trying to strain my eyes to look that far, but I think I got everything on there. Oh, and one last very important piece too is making sure that we're expanding our student data views and looks to include other central teams that are looking at adult data. So I know Nick and his team, I'm probably gonna stop because I don't want to steal on him, but
You're good. Yeah,
his data coming in and being a part of that comprehensive review as well.
And as Eliza alluded to there, we think it's equally as important right next to our student data review to review those data sets that impact our employees as well. I mean, to continue to sustain as the amazing district we know that we are, it is critical that we take care of the adults that take care of our kids. And we're committed to creating those teaching and leading environments that have been the hallmark of HRS Level 1, the safe collaborative spaces. And we know to do that, we need to continue to take the feedback from our staff and to refine the systems that we have in place, and also to expand them and to put some new ones to make sure that we do have our ear to the ground and understand what's taking place in our schools, and able to pivot and make changes or improvements as we need them across the district. And so I'm going to turn over to Nick to talk a little bit about what we're doing and what we see as next step in some of this work.
Good evening, and one of the things we wanted to outline was just our process that exists for the circumstances when an employee is injured. And you can see kind of the top there, it talks through working with notifying the principal, working with the nurse, and then human resources becomes involved, and then we share the information with our outside workers' compensation provider. One of the things that when a staff member is injured, we want to be able to provide them with some supports. And a few years back, we added the language below related to 10 additional sick days in instances when a staff member is assaulted by a student. And that has been a helpful benefit to work back into transitions or help people get back into school. We also have upgraded our employee assistance program. We're very happy with that service and the number of sessions and things that can be provided to our employees, and we bring that up in circumstances like this because when you are hurt by a child or you're in an incident like that, it is good to have an option to be able to talk with someone about that. And then we also then give them the option to meet with a member of human resources or employee relations. Now, one of the things that we really noticed was the next part about the data, and Director Finch, you kind of mentioned something earlier about our groups looking at the data, and one thing that I think we noticed as we were kind of looking through all these pieces is there were a lot of groups independently looking at a lot of pieces of data, but there's probably a benefit for us looking at a cross-section of data in a larger group. So you can see in there we identified a few different areas for data review that we want to look at in a larger group, and you can see the team members listed below. But it's looking at the Chapter 103 seclusion and restraint data. It's looking at the personal protective equipment requests. So when there are situations where they're working with a student and they need arm guards or some other personal protective equipment, we think that's telling information. Looking at employee accident reports, the ones that are being turned in from the previous slide, specifically looking at ones with intentional student contact, and then looking at office discipline referrals, specifically instances of physical aggression with and without injury or serious bodily injury. This was identified as we look at the data in the start of the slide that talks about last year we did have 11 incidents where a staff member was injured and needed outside medical attention. And what that refers to is a medical attention beyond what our nurse could provide. We have things that occur in the building that the nurse can address, but this would be outside a care. And you can see in this, we want to look at this data. It's a variety of people across various departments to then see if there are trends or information that we can glean from that we'd want to then use to impact our system.
Thanks, Nick. I think you hit on a critical part there at the end, is that you look at that cross-departmental collaboration on that data review, and that's what mirrors on the teaching and learning side with the data teams too. Eliza, we didn't have that listed out, but again, it's this idea that we bring a variety of positions around a table so that we don't miss something, or so it doesn't get siloed looking at it from one viewpoint. We believe this gives us better vantage point into the trends, into the data, both from a macro level, but also a micro level as well as we do this work. And we're almost to questions and opening up for discussion. But before that, just a quick note on staff feedback and our commitment to gaining that feedback. And this is information or ways that Matt had shared out with our staff a couple of weeks ago, and avenues that are available. But also I'd draw your attention to that last line about how we're going to continue to expand how we get that feedback. Matt mentioned he was with the Coralville Central staff last week, and that's something that's been and I apologize, Superintendent Degner, I'm reverting back to our time in the office, has been a point to go out and be face-to-face with staff members and get that feedback. And as we look to commit to bringing focus groups together of school personnel, and that's a piece that's critically important to us. One of the things we really leaned into at the beginning of last school year was getting that feedback from our administrators before we initiated something. Not after we put something in place, but to take ideas to them to get their feedback so we could continue to mold the concept before we put it into live action. We see the next evolution of that is doing that with our teachers and staff too, right? Not putting a new idea out there and then having them react to it. No, taking it out so that they can tell us, okay, this is what we think will work, this is where we think we need to lean in more, and truly build again from that bottom up. And so that we see these initiatives or the work that we do have that feel of coming from the district as a whole, not simply from the desk of the superintendent or the desk of the director of special ed or the executive director for secondary or elementary. That's just a brief overview of some of the work that's gone on since we met in the spring and where we see some of this work continuing throughout the rest of the school year. And with that, we'd open it up for questions and discussions.
Thank you, directors. The floor is open.
I'm gonna go first just because I've been quiet all night and I've been waiting for this one. I have two things and they're very different, so I'm gonna ask them one at a time, and I'm gonna take them in the reverse order. I was gonna ask them because of that last slide. Because one of our commenters today said a great thing, that this is something that's all of our problem to work on. And, you know, when Director Finch asked, you know, where's the teacher voice in the IEP meetings and things like that, I'm wondering the same thing. What voices are there as we look globally, when we look at our delivery model and our continuum and how we're swinging from one end to the other in a pendulum and maybe not landing in the right spot, because every kid is different, but we have to look globally. So I guess my question is, how are we making sure we have all of those voices as we look to be better tomorrow globally and not in the individual situations?
He said a lot that like made me excited to respond. So one, I just want to name and state our appreciation for the language you used around the pendulum swing, because we've talked a lot about that as a leadership team in regards to, and I think it's important just to make it visible that we recognize that for those of you that have been a part of Iowa City for a while, we used to have program model, right? Students weren't served in their home building, and they didn't have the opportunities that we've all worked really hard to ensure access to, which is their fundamental right to be in their home building and to be served with their peers. I think an unintended consequence that we've talked about as a leadership team of the DDSDP is when we implemented it, we did it in conjunction with that shift from programs, and we had a really high level focus on that home building. And I think when we were talking about that, what got lost in translation is an assumption that meant sometimes that all kids had to be in gen ed all day. And it didn't allow for that nuance that you're naming, which is that every student's needs are individual and deserve to be looked at as an individual and assessed accordingly, and a plan should be developed accordingly, which is what the intent of the DDSDP was and is. And that there's work to be done there. The graphic we showed earlier around utilization of our DDSDP and time, how they're being served, right, indicates that, right? Because that we serve roughly 1,800 students with IEPs. Well, if 90% of them, their program model looks relatively the same, which is what that infographic demonstrates, we're not doing our job to individualize that to the level it needs to be. I'm not here to make a judgment statement about where that needs to go, right? But that's information that tells me we're not individualizing enough, which is the work to be done. And then where those voices become really critical. So I think the first step is, as Chase alluded to earlier, first engaging with all those critical team members, gen ed teachers being one of them, that we recognize we've not engaged with enough. We've had the opportunity this year to start some just informal conversations as cases have presented themselves around student cases around better understanding what the general education teacher's perspective is coming into that conversation prior to this work. And what that's told us is they kind of view their role to be a lot of times the box we check that their attendance was noted because they're meeting a requirement. So we recognize that's where there's work to do. We need to be thinking, we should be starting there. That's that core content, and what does access look like? We can't make an informed decision without an informed proposal without that voice. So that to me is the first critical point. We've really focused on families and on special education teachers as those key engagement points, and they're critical members too. But I think the gen ed teacher voice is probably the next real focus point for our team, and that's why we're excited to start on that November 4th day with some shared learning as a team.
Okay, yeah, I think that's wonderful. I mean, because we do say, you know, all special education students are gen education students first, so the gen ed teachers should have a pretty big voice there globally, not just in the individual thing. Same thing with the families, right? They're there in an IEP meeting, but they could have some general ideas to help us just be better together. I think that's really what I think the commenter was saying, and I think that's what we can all embrace is like, how can we just all be better? So my second question is also, one of the commenters today relayed a story that a different parent came to me and relayed almost the exact same story, and I'm not going to give the details of it, but the question is, where is the space to notify parents and guardians that their kid might have witnessed a traumatic event? They may not have been a part of it, but they saw it, right? So one person talked about it, another parent came to me, and people are finding out about it later, and I know there's certain things that we can't just disclose to everyone, but there has to be a space to say, hey, your child might have had a traumatic event, you might want to be able to talk to them about it. Like, where's the space there for that? Or how does that work?
I think the answer there, Director Eystone, is we do need to be communicating that if that's what the students experienced. And so if that has been missed, then we need to take accountability for that. But if a student has witnessed that and that's been what's experienced in the classroom, then that does need to be communicated home to those families.
It's interesting comments. My interest is to have very many fewer traumatic events. I want to preface what I'm trying to say by recognizing that we have probably the best, or one of the best, central office staffing, central administration staffers in the entire state. I know you're doing your work the way you see you need to be doing it, and you're doing very good at the work you're doing. I'm also greatly puzzled and disturbed by what you and I heard earlier tonight. And not disturbed, well, disturbed and in a way puzzled by it too. Because I don't see a correspondence between what people told us tonight about the effect on the teacher and what's happening to students. I don't see the correspondence between that and what I heard from you. I'm not saying there isn't a correspondence. I'm just not quite seeing how the great work you're doing would change what we hear from parents. And that's not accusatory. So I guess what I would ask of you, all of you, is can you speak more directly about what you heard tonight and what you're doing in a way that maybe we can understand if we need to get more of you? That might be a good idea. And if we need to alter the approaches that we're undertaking.
Can I say something quick, sir?
Sure,
Because
go,
my
sorry, Kyle.
comment kind of relates to what you're saying, Charlie. I think that there's a lot of good systems in place, but the trust isn't there. We hear that over and over, that teachers don't want to report incidents that happen because they don't think anything will happen if they do. And so I'm not sure that we're hearing the true amount of things that are happening that we need to. And so I think we have a lot of systems in place, but we need to keep going with the conversations, you know, and I know Superintendent Degner, you're always very willing to take on any kind of any difficult conversation. I mean, I think we just need to keep working on that so we have more trust, that we get more information from teachers to their administrators and so on, making office referrals. I mean, I just think we've heard it over and over that teachers don't report because they don't think anything's going to happen. And some say they're afraid they'll get in trouble. I'm not sure about that piece, but I think there's a piece of why report, nothing's going to happen.
That's exactly what I'm hearing too, over and over again. And also part of that is that it takes time to report, right? And so if they think that nothing's going to be done, why bother? So this is why I'm very heartened to hear the steps that you've taken, that you're kind of reversing that. You're going to them now, and I'd love to see more of that. So I applaud you for that. I think that's great. And Director Williams had something to say.
No, I was going to jump in. I think it's I've also heard a little bit that you know, and I think we pride ourselves on a district in getting kids into a general education classroom as much as we can, and I think that there's a concern with teachers that if they push back a little bit about that, they are going against the culture of the district and they don't feel comfortable doing that. And that's a really hard, I think that's a misperception. I don't think that that's something that the admin team would do, but I think that is the perception that our gen ed teachers have. And so part of the puzzle here to me is changing that culture, which is really hard to do. I mean, like, I think we're capable of doing it because part of that is to change culture, you have to have trust between your teachers and our administrative team, and I think that exists in this district. And I really appreciate the comments about we need to get the general ed teachers involved more at the IEP meetings. I will tell you from talking to my husband, we have to be able to make like really good supports in place. Like these IEP meetings happen at times that like he can't go to because he's teaching. And there's not like a building sub that can come and teach for him. So when we think about getting the general ed teachers in, we have to think about radically restructuring how those meetings take place so that they are able to participate. And I don't know if that's building subs, I don't know if that's support for the classroom, like whatever it is, but we can't just say we want you there. We have to create a structure in which it is actually accessible for them to attend and participate in those meetings.
Just to piggyback on Director Williams' comment, I mean, along the same lines, I think, especially for the complex cases, we have to make sure as many voices as possible are at the table, including the paraeducators, because they might be involved in something totally different than what the classroom teacher is experiencing or what a specials teacher is experiencing. And being married to a specials teacher, they don't have that opportunity to, I mean, or at least they don't feel as though they have that opportunity to share related to those meetings. It's more like this is what happened and this is what you will put in place, but they don't. We need a mechanism for folks that can't physically be at the meeting to provide what they're experiencing, what they're seeing with their students, because it may be beneficial in developing what type of services they need.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that, Ruthina. But I also think that what I heard was that, especially from Mrs. Porter, was that the voices we are not hearing are from students.
I mean, I think what we, like, I'm gonna push back on that. We haven't been told this. Our annual progress report every year gives us the total number of students that are suspended for assault. Our physical aggression, which was 408 suspensions in the 23-24 year. There were 222 suspensions for fighting, right? And this is probably an undercount of fighting and physical assault. But what we heard tonight is the consequence of those numbers. That's the personal consequence of it. And one thing that I don't want to get lost in this, because like when I saw this presentation pushing special education with this and IEPs with this, is that this is beyond an IEP thing, and I don't want that to get lost in this discussion as well. And this, not trying to hate on anybody or the way that it was put, but it's like this, what I hear isn't from parents talking about a special education student in their children's class. It's other students too, and I don't want that to be lost in the discussion tonight. Anyway, so that's my piece for right now.
Well, I think that's a good question, and a question I had too, is how many students who engage in violent behavior, I'll use violent, it's not always the right characterization, but how many of those students that parents talked about tonight, or how many incidents of teachers that had received some kind of physical aggression? How many of those instances are from students that have IEPs? Are all of them? Half of them? Some part of them? And I think that's what I heard Director Lingo.
I don't think you can really answer, because when you get, right now we're at 11, and if you get down to the end count, that's gonna start identifying students specifically. But as far as we can see for the suspension data, that's broken down by IEP status. And it's from April, and that was for physical aggression. Non-IEP was 150, or that's fighting. Non-IEP was 232, IEP was 176.
And another question, another thing that I'm really bothered about is what's the accuracy of what we heard tonight? You know, I believe parents when they talk about what happens to their kids. But what I heard tonight was that this district has a huge number of kids that are assaulting their teachers. Is that accurate? And how can we determine whether or not that's accurate or not?
So that seems like a pretty straightforward question to us, Charlie. And one of the things that, Director Eastham, one of the things we've looked at as we've gone back and looked at this over the summer is Director Lingo talks about the stats on physical aggression. As our CBA is currently written, we do not have a category specific to assault of a staff member. And so it is encased in that larger number. And so to be able to get to the point that you're speaking of, we see that as something we need to zero in on better, to carve out a category, a path to report those specific pieces that are assault on a staff member. Nick talked about it. It's been called out a couple of times about that number of 11, those incidences that required that medical treatment as something that we have that we can look at. But we understand that we need to look at a better way to identify those more quickly. And so understanding that as it's currently set up under the CBA, it's not readily available to us in that data. And so looking at that change, and that's something we can do in relatively short order as we look at that.
And we also, I think, need to continue to build the trust that we'll get accurate data from teachers about what's happening
Absolutely.
in the classroom. And I think there's good steps in that, but that needs to be a piece of it too, that we're getting more, figuring out more ways to get feedback, which I know you talked about.
And I know that the superintendent wants to jump in, and I'm glad you came back to that, Director Abraham, because I think a positive step in that direction is that we are starting to hear teachers tell those things to us directly, whether it's to Matt, whether it's to me, whether it's to a member of the leadership team. And even as 6 months ago, it was whispers, or we would hear that, but we now, we're hearing more staff members coming to us and saying specifically some of the things that you've heard, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in group settings. And so I do see that as a positive step, and that's not going to solve it. That doesn't mean the work is done, but to help to build that trust, we don't have to hear it. Then we have to start acting on it, right? We talk a lot about collecting data, and there's nothing worse than asking for feedback or collecting data and then not doing anything with it. And so we understand that part of that building trust is not just saying, hey, we hear you, but then it's also making some changes with what we've learned.
I've had a lot of thoughts while you guys were talking, and I think we'll have to come back to some of them. I was going to jump in a few different times, but I think it's great for you guys to have the conversation. I think the thing I would just challenge your thinking on a little bit is that the same thing I shared with the staff, that if there was an easy solution, we'd be employing it. So a lot of the things you're asking about, or where there can even be some system breakdowns, it's because as a system we've tried to improve and we've removed old, tired solutions that we don't employ anymore. We don't generally suspend kindergartners through second graders. And so when staff report that nothing's happening to them, I think we have to ask ourselves the question, what do we expect to happen to them and what are we okay? And that's not to be combative or argumentative, but what does that look like? Because that's going to look different to everybody about how much time away from the classroom's okay, what kind of consequence is meaningful to the staff member versus that we've said we're okay with our CBA. Those are really complex, nuanced issues. And I appreciate Director Lingo's comment about it's not just a special education issue, right? I do think we have some high frequency in the amount of aggression we see towards staff in the area of special education in comparison to where we see that data in other places. I think that'll be a data point that we can come back to that I don't think should be surprising or shocking, but it's happening there, and that's why that continuum conversation is also important, right? Because if they're displaying that in front of their peers in the general ed classroom, they may not be exhibiting the readiness to be in that classroom. And so then do we have the other supports in place in the building to land in that middle, as you've heard us talk about the pendulum or the continuum. And so I do think as we've thought about, just think about long-term history in the district. We've stopped secluding and restraining kids. We've stopped suspending for certain offenses. And so when those things are taken off the plate or we use those, it's kind of Director Finch's point about there are some unintended consequences of that. Right? And that unintended consequence can't be the physical safety of our staff, though, right? That's, I think, where we have some consensus on. It's just then what are the solutions to try to prevent and mitigate that? And I think you saw some of our best thinking here over the last, 24 months as we've continued to work on this, as we've heard more of it from staff, but we're not going to identify all the answers ourselves, right? And I think that's the staff feedback part. That's Molly's point about building that staff trust, that the best way for us to continue to gain that and build upon that is to bring staff in to be part of the solutions. Where we'll need your help is knowing what are the non-negotiables, what are our barriers, what are our goalposts to work in as we continue down this road, because that does create a different menu of potential solutions we have. Some of those are dictated to us, just like I walked through. Some of them are going to be dictated by your comfort level with where we are in the community. But when we know those things and we know what the staff is, welcoming us or are willing for us to do and intervene with, I think we can land on good, hard solutions. Just like somebody shared, we do say we're the best. And if we're going to be the best, we need to have the ability to acknowledge hard problems and develop solutions to those hard problems.
I just want to add, Matt, that we stop seclusion and restraint, and we stop suspend, and we reduce suspensions. And I'm never going to start expelling elementary school students, because we know that those kinds of things don't work and they're immoral.
Yeah, one of the things that I come across with parents is, especially with like the policy 503.8, it's very gray, and I get a lot of questions on when do you elevate a level 1 to a level 2 response or a level 2 to level 3 response when it comes to that. I know there was a parent in the spring that came and spoke on it with their incidents that their child was experiencing. And I get the kindergarten through second grade, but on top of that, like, how many times does a violent incident have to happen with the student before you go down the path towards those things? And I'm not speaking to that instance,
Yeah.
but it's just like an overarching thing that I hear from parents with young kids. And I get that some of these kids are coming from not great environments, and you suspend them, that means you're putting them in not great environments. And I get the push and shove, but at the same point in time, there is, at the end of the day, it's the kids that are in the classroom that are having to experience it too.
And we still have, guidelines, and we have consequences and expectations we still follow through on, right? I think Laura had talked about earlier that, all of those factors determine that, and those are outlined in the CBA. The factors that should be considered, when things would present that would move it along levels. I think in that specific area of questions, Director Lingo, as we get further into this conversation throughout the year, I think it might be just good to do some review of the CBA to know what that looks like, what our administrators use for the tool, your familiarity and comfort level with it, so that you would have some firsthand knowledge, because it's hard to talk a hypothetical because every situation's different and going to have different factors. Now, there are some standards, and there's obviously an offense is going to have its own part of the CBA, and we would walk through how those different levels are handled with each of those offenses. But I think it'd be good probably for us to come back and spend some time on that CBA, again, review kind of how it was created, why we landed on the things we did, and then dive into a couple maybe more hypotheticals at that time. But I think Laura did a nice job. I don't know if she'd have anything she'd want to add into that.
I would just say, these are living documents for us. That's why the CBA is electronic, because we do make updates, and we want them in real time. But we've done a lot of work with that CBA. We can still do more, but I would say more than revising the CBA, we're going to definitely take a look at 5031. Does that make sense? So that we can make sure that it's speaking to what we have in our CBA in a way that's less gray. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But yeah, it all has to do with severity, and that's outlined in detail in the CBA. Not as much in 5031. Okay. So we can definitely do some improvements there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? I know this is a conversation that, we can't solve everything or maybe not anything tonight, but it's a good start. For me, I would like to have a more intense conversation, maybe at a work session, surrounding the CBA and some of the things we heard tonight, especially the building trust part. I appreciate Superintendent Degner and Deputy Superintendent Ramey going into buildings and meeting with staff. I'm assuming those meetings are planned in a way where dialogue can happen, meaning it's more than 10 minutes, more than 15 minutes, but it allows for a meaningful conversation and perhaps time where you can meet individually with staff, because not everybody may not feel comfortable speaking in a room full of their colleagues about certain things, but ensuring that folks know that you're available if they want to share something more personal. And that's taken a lot of time, I know, from your schedules. So I know when we ask you to do one thing, that means something else may not be addressed. So that's also a conversation that we need to have as a board, as Superintendent said, what some of our non-negotiables or what some are the things that we're willing to allow as we address some of the concerns we heard tonight. So, there's no other comments, or? I'm sorry, I don't mean to prolong it. I just have a question.
Sure.
I have PD questions. So I know the November 4th is for general ed class teachers. What about everybody else? Like, do we provide PDs for our paraeducators, for our specials?
Sorry. So November 4th is one of many like structures we have to provide PD. So it's part of our negotiated agreement. It's a work from an alternate location day in the morning section part of that, 8:15 to 11:15. Is virtual professional learning that teachers can engage in. So we'll have a whole bunch of different professional learning options for teachers for all teachers to engage in. Why we specifically called out this learning opportunity is because of some of the notices we've had, and that we wanted to draw attention to. We were going to be targeting that through this. And then speaking to your other question around paraprofessional development, that's something last year we started. So we'd not been able to provide PD for our special education paraeducators outside of the required like trainings. We didn't have the capacity to, it wasn't part of the negotiated agreement, or we didn't have ways to pay them. So we worked hard on that. So last year we started offering 16 hours of additional paid professional learning. And we have different PD series. So there's some choice in that they can engage in. We record all those sessions so they can go back and watch them as well. And then that's 12 hours of content, and then 4 hours they can have of building-based professional learning, where it's reviewing their behavior plans with their teacher, working with their building team. A lot of buildings choose to have them come in before school starts and review the student plans and do a deep dive. So those are some ways we've enhanced learning and are continuing to respond to creating PD opportunities for those different stakeholders.
The one thing I want to add here is, and Brady's done a nice job of, in a very constructive way, continue to challenge us to improve the quality of the professional development that we provide our staff. And I think that's the type of encouragement and support that we need from our teachers to continue to challenge what we provide. And Lucas talked about it, but I want to come back to what he talked about in the teacher learning reports about the PD we did this summer about leading high quality professional development, because we can't just throw a topic out there. And so we really have tried to put some time and intensity around, okay, what does high quality PD look like? How is it engaging? It's not just a sit and get. How are we teaching skills? How are we providing scenarios so they can ask us questions? Back to Director Eyestone's point about how are we getting some of that feedback and some of that voice. And so when we talk about PD, this isn't your, 1987 sit and get PD. This is supposed to be high quality engagement where it is more of that back and forth that President Malone, you were talking about, even when the superintendent, and I get to tag along with them to go meet with buildings. And so we are really trying to look into that more robust model of what we can do there. And the other thing that I mentioned, Director Eystone, and so it made me think about this earlier, is I think one of the reflection points is that we need to make sure we're asking the right questions. We've done over the years a lot of different data collection, whether it's climate and culture surveys or HRS level 1 surveys, and get that feedback. But we need to make sure we're asking those right questions. And I think that's probably something where we could use a more critical and discerning eye when we put some of those pieces out there. Because as I said, there's nothing worse than getting back data and not doing anything with it, or thinking you're asking one question and then getting answers to a different question. And I think that helps to go build that trust along with that. So looking at what are we asking, what are we offering, and we believe the work we've done around some of these PD engagements is another step in that direction of that work.
Thank you so much. That takes us to our action item for tonight, which is the Dream Accelerator Contract Awards. Is there a motion?
I move approval of the award.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions or comments?
I have a question for Superintendent Degner. Where in the PEPAL budget for fiscal year 26, there isn't a mention of this? Where does it fall into our PEPAL budget?
Kurt, do you want to talk through that life cycle portion?
So we allocated about $1 million for building improvements. It'll come out of that, but as we stand right now, within the FMP side of this, our costs are tracking lower because 1220 is expediting our project along with Atlanta, JA Atlanta. So we are getting savings by them doubling up on their production values. So some
Thank you.
Hearing nothing further, Board Secretary Coburn, ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Director Easton, I haven't got yours. There it is. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Easton, Istone, Malone, and Williams voting yea, and Directors Finch and Lingo voting nay.
Thank you. That takes us to our agenda setting and upcoming events portion of the agenda. So the first meeting for agenda setting we have will be for the October 14th meeting date, will be operations, and the discussion will be climate action update. That will start at 5 o'clock. And then at 6 o'clock, we will have our regularly scheduled meeting. The regularly scheduled items are on there: student representative updates, ICEA updates. Policy review, we will have our annual ombuds report. And Superintendent Degner, based off the parking lot items, I don't have pulled up.
Yeah, I got a couple edits here for you. So the 14th for operations, we'd actually like to suggest data governance and take climate action later in the year.
Okay.
So we'd like to switch that topic if that's amenable to the board. And then October 21st is actually a district close day, and so we will not have staff. So we're suggesting moving the follow-up of the Iowa School performance profiles into the regular meeting on the 14th. We still have a request for HRS Level 2 data that we would bump to then the November Ed Committee meeting. That falls nicely in line as when I was talking about that cadence earlier that we would have liked to do this fall. We had planned to take kind of core instruction October 28th, November 11th, we would have come back to interventions. And then so now we'll kind of conclude with that Ed Committee HRS Level 2 data during that November Ed Committee meeting, since if you remember, we only have one regular meeting there in November. Chase already talked about the switch with the balance with November and December only being able to have one committee meeting each month, and that we would do one ops and one P&G committee. But I think President Malone mentioned the Ombuds Annual Report, the 200 series for the 14th of October, and then Iowa School performance profile follow-up will happen at that meeting too, since we don't have that Ed Committee meeting in October because of the district close day. So I think those were all of the edits I had to suggest or provide to you. Is there any issues with any of those?
Did you say you're changing operations meeting from climate action?
Yeah, to data governance instead. I think Adam had suggested that. We had a couple maybe topics that were a little closer to home right now that we wanted to get in front of you, and then climate we usually have traditionally taken in the second half of the year.
No complaints.
Okay.
Okay. Any items for the parking lot that directors would like to share now, or you can email them?
I'm interested in seeing if there's a agreement to try to follow up on the cell phone policy, since we received a few messages, fairly long and detailed, about parental interest in going to a bell-to-bell policy. But I'm not wedded to any particular schedule for doing that. If we want to.
Superintendent Degner, when would you have data available, updated on that for us to look at?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have some ongoing data. That's not the biggest issue. I would tell you just from a workflow standpoint, I think the topic we just left is probably a priority for the team, more so than cell phones right now. And so I'd prefer to try to give us some more space for that. So I'd either suggest that second October meeting or November before we'd come back to cell phones and look at the data. When's the end of the try, guys? October, early November? Maybe after try one.
Okay.
Would be a thing. We could look after try one, look at the data from try one, and then we could have a follow-up conversation about where we're going with cell phones, if that would be okay.
That would be fine with me.
Yeah. And I mean, just as you mentioned, Superintendent Degner, the conversation that we were in tonight, I would love to come back to have more
Yeah,
in-depth.
definitely.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
We just need to find the right time for that work session. So we'll do some follow-up here tonight, and then I'll have something to suggest back to you.
still kind of wanting some more information about the mental health supports, and so if you are able to incorporate that into the work session, that'd be great.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think what I want to come back to you with is almost maybe a series of different things, right?
Okay.
Because I think there's going to be a few topics we need to probably do a deeper dive on for just some understanding, mental health one, CBA one, just as we're thinking through some of these. And so we'll think through maybe a schedule like that rotates through a number of these items.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Anything else? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.